This is not a story of heresy, nor Xenos invasion. This is the fate of a planet whose vox fell silent, whose astropaths went mad, whose faith was tested and found utterly alone, forgotten by the Imperium, denied by the Administratum, abandoned by the Emperor himself. If you still believe the Emperor watches all, listen closely, because this world slipped through the cracks, and something in the warp has taken his place. Subscribe if you dare to hear what happens when even terror forgets your name. No one called it a disappearance. At first, it was just a skipped astropathic reply, then a shipment delayed, then vox static for 3 days instead of the usual 2. But by the 4th week, without contact from the segmentum relay, without rerouted instructions, without orbital drop, without acknowledgement, the people started whispering. We're being tested. He's purifying our patience. He still watches, just from farther away. The kind of things people say when they're still trying to believe. I remember the first day the sky turned wrong. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't warp taint. It wasn't even nightfall. Just absence. Like something above us had blinked. And in the space of that blink, we were no longer there. The governor issued a proclamation, of course. He declared the silence a holy audit, a blessed stillness where we must prove our loyalty without hand-holding from terror. No one said anything aloud. But even the administratum clerks stopped signing their daily attendance ledgers. I was a vox maintenance scribe, low rank, below pay scale, hardly noticed. But I knew what the cables beneath the ecclesiarchal tower were saying, or more precisely, what they weren't saying. We'd checked every junction, every trans relay. We even brought a tech priest up from the forge stacks. He pulsed his incantations, sprayed sacred oils, chanted binaric litanies. The machine answered, but not with imperial signal, just a low, rhythmic buzz, not random, not broken, just indifferent. That was the first time I realized something terrifying. The machines weren't malfunctioning. They had simply stopped trying to connect, as if they too had accepted we were no longer being watched. A preacher named San held vigil outside the central chapel for 5 days straight. He lit candles every hour, recited the same 3 verses, burned his own tongue when he misspoke. He said, "The Emperor is observing how we respond to divine silence, and we must respond with purity." On the 6th day, he walked into the ash sun barefoot, chanting. No one followed him. We never saw him again. But I swear, I still hear his voice in the vox static some nights. The scariest part, the world didn't end. There was no invasion, no uprising, no plague, just continuation, without acknowledgement, without orders, without any indication that we still belong to something greater. That's what makes you break. Not heresy, not fear, just being forgotten. We used to believe the Emperor watched all his worlds, that even in darkness his gaze protected us. But I've walked the high vox towers, I've stared into the signal no one answers, and I've seen the truth that scares me more than death. The Emperor forgot this planet, and in the silence that followed, something else remembered. My shift began during dusk rotation. The sky was dim, not from clouds, but from something in the upper atmosphere that had been slowly thickening since the last failed orbital ping. The Mechanicus said it was a harmless particulate anomaly. The guards just called it the curtain, because ever since it formed, the stars had stopped appearing. even the ones we used for astropathic alignment. Sector Chapel 9. A sat halfway between the governor's spire and the pilgrim tombs. It wasn't much, half collapsed from a Prometheum quake 5 cycles ago, but still technically functional. 1 Vox mast, 1 transmission plate, 2 servo altars, and me. Vox Clark 3rd rank Gel Varan. Barely cleared for liturgical message review, but assigned full duty rotation ever since my superior went missing. They called it a transfer, but we all knew no shuttles had arrived in 3 months. The first red flag came during evening chant alignment. I keyed in the standard benediction burst, cycled the psalm sequence thrice, and waited. Normally, we'd get a faint echo back within 90 seconds. Just static confirmation from a distant signal array. Automated, cold, but comforting. This time, nothing. I re-verified the Auspex channel, recalibrated the plate. Still nothing. I waited 10 minutes, then 15, then an hour, and then it came, but it wasn't the return ping. It was something else entirely. A faint hum, low, almost like machinery grinding, but smoother, rhythmic. Then, a voice, not spoken, just present, like a memory that didn't belong to me, spilling across the Vox system in fractured syllables. He left, he left, he left. 3 times, each one slower than the last. And then silence. I stood there frozen, not out of fear, out of recognition. I'd heard that phrase once before, spoken by a pilgrim child years ago. He'd gotten lost in the shrine crypts, wandered for hours. When we found him, shaking and wide-eyed, the only words he said were, "He left." I never forgot that. And now I was hearing it again, not from the child, from the Vox itself. I filed the incident, of course, stamped it low priority, as all unconfirmed signal anomalies must be. But I didn't send the report up the chain, because there is no chain anymore. The last message we got from the High Vox Tower was 17 cycles ago, a weather report. The sky darkened. The air tasted faintly of copper. I shut down the mast and locked the shrine. Didn't pray, didn't kneel, didn't whisper anything into the static. Because that night, I realized something simple and terrifying. If no one is listening, then nothing you say matters. But I wasn't alone. When I passed by the central courtyard on the way back, I saw a figure kneeling in front of the shattered Aquila monument. A young woman in miner's robes, eyes closed, hands clasped, mouth twitching with frantic, silent prayer. But there were no words coming out, just motion, a mimicry, like someone acting faith because they didn't remember what it was supposed to feel like. She looked up when I approached, smiled and said, "I think he's waiting for us to stop pretending." I didn't reply. I just walked home, feeling something cold press against the back of my spine. It wasn't wind. It wasn't warp. It was the realization that maybe the only ones who haven't forgotten this planet are the ones we were supposed to forget first. It started with a scream, not from the outside, not from a beast or enemy in the dark. It came from within the chapel itself, from deep inside the sanctuary, where no screams should begin. By the time I reached the doors, they were already open. No alarms, no warnings, no signs of violence, no blood, no scorch marks, no claw scratches on the walls, just stillness and one figure kneeling. He was hunched in front of the pulpit, cloaked in faded priest robes, mouth open, eyes rolled back. He was breathing, but only barely, and his lips kept moving, fast, whispering something again and again. He chanted the litany of endurance over and over, but there was something deeply wrong with it. The pattern was familiar, the rhythm matched, but the words weren't from any canon I'd ever studied. It was the cadence of prayer, but not one recorded in any sanctioned text of the ecclesiarchy. Then I heard it clearly, the words etched into my memory as if burned there by dread. O watchful flame, O thunder silence, let the dust remember us, let the stars weep clean our names, let the throne forget not our faces. I moved closer, gently placed my hand on his shoulder, but he flinched like I'd struck him violently. His eyes snapped wide open, veins bulging, blood slowly seeping from the corners of both sockets. But he didn't see me. Not really. He was looking through me, beyond me, at something unseen. I asked quietly but firmly, "Who taught you that prayer?" But he just kept whispering faster now. There was panic in his voice, desperation, like he believed if he didn't finish, something would awaken, or maybe something wouldn't, and that scared him even more. His hands were trembling, white-knuckled and raw. Medici and acolytes rushed in behind me, trying to help, trying to sedate and stabilize him. But the moment a needle touched his skin, he bit one of them and screamed a forgotten name. Veneratus, the Rememberer. And then his chest ruptured. Not like a wound or explosion. It just cracked, like the bones gave up holding in what hid inside. From the cavity came a sound, one I pray never to hear again. It was laughter, not his. It was ancient, hollow, amused. Something had answered a prayer he never meant to finish. They sealed the chapel that night, declared it under re-sanctification review, and posted warning servitors outside. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I know what tried to listen. Later that week, I found those same words etched on an old hymn slate deep in the archive. The writing was done in dried blood, faint, cracked, but unmistakably deliberate in stroke and structure. There was no scribe mark, no date, no clerical ID, just 4 verses burned into the slate. O watchful flame, O thunder silence, let the dust remember us. Let the stars weep clean our names. Let the throne forget not our faces. I showed it to Vox Overseer Fen, hoping for some explanation, some record or forbidden text link. But he just stared at the lines in silence, then whispered, "Erase it. We don't want more recitations by accident." He tried to act calm, but I saw the fear in him. He recognized those words, and he didn't want to remember why. I didn't erase it. I copied the words to a separate slate and hid it in my quarters, not from curiosity, but fear, because I realized it wasn't a prayer at all. It was a signal, and whoever sent it wasn't asking for salvation. They were leaving a warning. That night, I dreamed of a throne built from bones, but not bones of flesh or men. These were the bones of memory, of forgotten names, of prayers never meant to be answered. Seated upon it was a figure in priestly robes, his face melted wax, lips still moving. He whispered the same prayer, but I still couldn't understand the meaning, only the dread behind each word. And behind him, something massive, ancient, unseen, watched me from a space that had no end. I woke up shaking, blood in my ears, heartbeat slow and irregular, like time was failing me. The slate I had copied the prayer to was gone, and in its place, a handwritten note in my own script. Don't finish the 4th line, it listens. And since that day, I haven't prayed, not once, not aloud, not in my mind, because maybe, on a forgotten world like this, faith isn't what protects you. It's what marks your position. It didn't happen suddenly. There wasn't a blackout, no storm, no grand proclamation, just absence. The stars vanished first. One night they were there, the next night they weren't. No clouds, no fog, just nothing. No pinpricks of light, no moons, no orbital beacons. Nothing but a velvet sheet of dark. Too smooth. Too perfect. Like someone painted over the sky with the color forgotten. We filed reports. The administrator marked them low priority. Said it was atmospheric instability. Something about particles, interference, cosmic dust. But the dust didn't move. Not with wind, not with time. Not even with orbital push from the old failing satellites. It just hung there. Like a ceiling. Like we were insects in a sealed box. I stopped going outside at night. Not because I feared the dark. I feared what might stare back from it. Or worse, what wouldn't. Guardsmen on night patrols began filing psych disruption complaints. They said time felt slower when they looked up. Some said they saw faces. Others heard their own thoughts whispered back to them. Wrong. Echoed, but wrong. Like hearing a recording of yourself thinking, but played through static. Then came the animals. Herds of sun bovines walked into rivers and never resurfaced. Wing lizards flew into the sky and didn't come back down. Hive mites began forming upward-facing hives toward the blankness overhead. One even crawled onto the chapel roof. It just sat there, staring, not moving, not reacting, until it burst into flames during morning mass. No one was near it, no fuel, no spark. It just caught fire, like it had touched something too real to survive. I stopped trusting the clocks. They still ticked, still moved, still chirped out their hourly rites, but some days felt like they folded inward, like I lived a week between breakfast and prayer, and others slipped past me like my memories had skipped forward without my consent. I'd reach for a door and suddenly be inside the next room. I'd blink and realize the sun had set again, or maybe it never rose. I asked Overseer Fenn if we could recalibrate the day-night chronos. He didn't answer, just stared up through the ceiling hatch with swollen eyes, then whispered, "If there's no sky, then where does the Emperor live?" They removed him the next morning. Psych contamination, they said. Sent him to Subsector Isolation Wing 4. But I know what really happened. He looked too long. He tried to remember what the sky was supposed to be, and he looked back. A girl named Yala, one of the quarter scribes, hung herself from the chapel rafters. Left a note nailed to the pulpit. "We haven't seen the stars in days. We haven't seen the sun in weeks. We haven't seen ourselves in years." I dream about that note. Except in the dream, it doesn't end. There's another line, one I never read on the real paper, but in the dream it's written in red. The sky remembers, and it will not forgive us for being forgotten. That morning I walked out into the square, stared up. Nothing, just the void. Not warp-tainted, not glowing, not roaring with chaos or storm, just missing. And for the first time in my life I realized something unholy. I don't miss the Emperor. I miss the idea of being watched. Because no one's watching us anymore. Not him, not Terra, not anyone. And I think that means we're free, or worse. We're up for grabs. There was a time when this planet meant something. They called it Sanctus Orbal, a waypoint world, a rest stop between minor hive sectors and shrine planets deeper in the segmentum. We weren't glorious, we weren't vital, but we were visible, and that was enough. Enough for pilgrim barges, enough for ecclesiarchal processions, enough for hope. Every month they'd arrive, dust-covered transporters, faith-bloated missionaries, tattooed fanatics dragging bleeding banners, even families who had sold everything just to kneel at our shrines for one day. The smell of incense and old steel, the sound of chants echoing off chapel walls, the feel of being part of something. It kept us sane. Even the administratum clerks treated the pilgrim records like sacred texts. Now, the landing pads are rusted shut, the torch towers haven't been lit in 3 months, and the outer shrine gates were swallowed by dust 2 weeks ago. No one comes anymore. At first, they blamed warp storms. Then they said the astropathic signal was misaligned. Then they stopped saying anything at all. The last recorded arrival was 42 cycles ago, a barge called the Penitent's Light. They landed late, stayed 1 night, left without saying a word. Their captain left a single offering at the main altar, a sealed vox tape labeled "Forgotten." No one played it. They sent it to Sector Archive 7B for inspection, but Archive 7B burned down during the cold flare last month. Nothing recovered. I used to walk the old landing causeways after my shifts. You can still see the footprints, dried in ash, pressed into memory. Whole processions frozen in time. Kneeling lines of faithful pilgrims gone. Some nights I hear them. Faint footsteps. The rustle of robes. Low whispers of hymns that never made it into the canon. But when I check, nothing. Just wind across steel. Just echoes from beneath the landing spires. Or maybe it's not wind. Maybe it's residue. The spiritual scar of faith once believed in too hard, and now left behind. I found a child once, sitting on the landing platform, alone, barefoot, wearing a pilgrim's robe. But we'd had no arrivals, no inbound signals, no shuttle logs. She was just there. I approached her slowly. She looked up, smiled and said, "We came late. But it's okay, he's not here anymore." Then vanished. No smoke, no light, just gone, like she'd never been real. I reported it, of course. The Arbeit sent me for a mental reassessment. I passed, but they still reassigned me. Now I sought defunct Vox recordings in the Underarchive. I don't mind. Down here it's easier to believe that we were never important, that we were never meant to be a destination, that the pilgrims came here not for enlightenment, but to leave something behind. Maybe the Emperor didn't forget this planet. Maybe we were never on the list to begin with. And the pilgrims, maybe they weren't seeking salvation. Maybe they were burying evidence. Evidence of failure, of madness, of faith that fed the wrong gods. No pilgrims come anymore. And I don't think they ever will, because word has spread. And even the mad, the devout, the desperate, don't kneel where the throne no longer looks. No one sounded the alarm. There was nothing obvious to report. No orbital bombardment, no atmosphere breach, no nova flares. And yet, the sky had stopped moving, not slowed, not shifted, stopped. I was in the agri-habs when I noticed it. It was late. Cycle bell had rung hours ago. Still, the horizon burned that same pale rust orange it always did at sundown. Except this wasn't sundown. This was the 3rd night in a row it hadn't set. At first, we blamed the holoscopes, flickering lenses, outdated chronospires, low-grade cogitator error. Even the Mechanicus agreed. Sent 2 tech adepts to recalibrate the dome's orbital lenses. Neither came back. We didn't notice they were gone until their crawler returned on its own, riding in circles around the outer hab like it had forgotten how to stop. Then came the wildlife deaths. Sun bovines collapsed with blood in their eyes. Burrow lizards dug into concrete trying to find darkness. Flock birds just dropped from the sky mid-flight. Wings outstretched, necks stiff, beaks open. It wasn't heat stroke. There was no heat. The air was cold, thin, wrong, like it had been filtered through a memory we weren't supposed to breathe. The priest told us to rejoice, said it was the Emperor's unwavering gaze. But I've never known faith to feel so clinical, so interested. Guardsmen started reporting hallucinations during dusk patrol. One trooper claimed to see cities in the sky. towering spires made of fire and metal, slowly revolving around a black sun. Another swore he saw a second version of himself staring back from the clouds. He fired at it 12 times. When they pulled the rifle from him, he was sobbing. He didn't blink. He kept whispering. He didn't blink because he wanted me to remember. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I could feel the sky pulling at me, like it was thinking, not watching, thinking. After the 5th cycle, we stopped referring to it as day and night. There was no difference. The sky was just a constant, a dome of frozen time. The same clouds, same sun angle, same sickly glare, like a still frame from a vidlog that someone forgot to play. I tried logging it into the system. The administratum cogitator looped. Tried to auto-complete my report with strange phrases. The firmament is not required. All upward pathways denied. Light retained for recitation. What does that even mean? My neighbor Rulin blacked out during work duty. When she woke up, she claimed she'd had a conversation with the sky. Not under the sky. With it. She said it asked her one question. If the Emperor cannot find you, who do you belong to? They sedated her, took her away. Her house has been quiet ever since. Too quiet. I checked last night, she's still inside. Still breathing, just staring upward. Even with a ceiling above her, her eyes never leave the sky. The light feels heavier now, like it's pressing on our bones. Time isn't ticking right. Some people swear entire days pass in seconds. Others insist they've been trapped in a single hour for weeks. One child aged 3 years in front of her family. Her hair turned grey. She forgot her name. She just murmured one sentence again and again. We were supposed to keep moving, but we stopped, and it saw that. I'm afraid to look up now. Even during duty, I wear a black veil hood under my helmet, pretend it's for sun protection. But it's not the sun I fear. It's what might be behind it. I asked a tech adept what it would mean if planetary rotation failed. He just stared at me and said, "That's not the question. The question is why the universe thinks we should still be spinning." Then he drove a drill into his own ear. There's no planetary error, no axis malfunction, no magnetic surge, no orbital disruption. Everything is functioning. Everything is broken. The sky doesn't move anymore. And I think, whatever's above us, it's not space, not stars, not even the warp. It's something waiting, patient, still, endless, like a god that forgot it died. The administratum doesn't panic. It delays. It requests forms. It seals entries. It redirects to other departments that no longer exist. It never says something is wrong. It just says, processing. We sent 18 emergency communiques in 11 days, all tagged as signal black by the system, all rerouted, all marked awaiting confirmation from upper tier comms. No one confirmed. No one responded. The last reply we received was from an ancient servitor bureau beneath the central hab core. It read, "Delay consistent with astropathic fog or re-evaluation period. No evidence of heresy. No imperial fault logged. Remain in place. Do not seek contact." We sent the follow-up. The response this time: "This planet is not currently scheduled for memory. Memory, not delivery, not contact. Memory." The word repeated in the system for hours. Every login, every cogitator, every script and data sheet. This planet is not currently scheduled for memory. I asked a priest what that meant. He said nothing. He just pulled out his data slate, found an old sermon about apostasy, and began reading it in a flat voice, without pausing, without blinking, without acknowledging me. When I shook him, he finally stopped and whispered, "This isn't abandonment. It's erasure. The higher-ups kept insisting there was a bureaucratic reason for the silence. They blamed poor scheduling, unlogged warp storms, unpaid tithes, clerical reroutes, vox lag, solar drift. They blamed everything except the obvious. We've been cut off. Not accidentally, deliberately. I found a parchment stamped from 2 decades ago, buried under shrine data files. It read, "Low-value systems in segmentum obscurus may experience extended communion lulls. If symptoms persist, report to regional relay anchor." But our relay anchor is gone. It collapsed 5 years ago, swallowed by a landslide that never made it into any Imperial record. We checked our standing. Our tithe was logged. Faithful. Compliant. Obedient. Still we were flagged. Review pending. Authority undefined. Stasis level. Intermediate. Stasis. They used that word twice. We asked what that meant. The response was worse than silence. A transmission full of fragmented voice echoes. Jumbled words. Glitching syllables. But one sentence came through clearly. "You are not forgotten. You are not known." What does it mean to be unknown? To be on the list of not remembered? Adept Rhine tried to compile our planetary compliance record manually. Built an archive out of old census notes, shrine audits, guard reports, and vox transcripts. He was trying to prove our loyalty. Halfway through, he stopped, stared at the blank data sheet. Tears ran down his face. "I can't find us," he said. "I keep writing, but I don't know who we are anymore. I used to believe the Imperium was slow, massive, bloated, buried in its own rituals. But now I see the truth. It's not slow. It's forgetting, all the time. Forgetting planets, forgetting systems, forgetting us." The governor issued a decree. Remain calm. Continue rites. Continue tithe prep. No heresy detected. We haven't had a supply ship in 6 months. No off-world vox in 8. The tithe is ready, stacked in silence. No one to take it. A shrine to bureaucracy. An altar to nothing. We asked for permission to send a long-range flare beacon. They denied it. Claimed unauthorized contact attempts may trigger review protocols. Review. That's what they call punishment now. That's what they call forgetting. I don't know if this is apostasy anymore, or if the God Emperor himself is buried under so many layers of protocol and faith that he can't even see through them. Maybe he wants to help. Maybe he screamed when we faded from his sight. But the machine doesn't hear screams. It files them and forgets. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't sabotage. No seismic tremors. No orbital impacts. No warband raids. The chapel just fell. Shrine Sector 3, the oldest basilica on the northern ridge, stood for over 300 years, built from ferrocrete and sacred rebar, sanctified by 5 high cardinals, carved with purity seals thicker than plasteel. They said the foundations were blessed directly from Terra, and still it collapsed. No noise, no warning, just a low groan. And then, emptiness. Where the chapel had stood, there was only absence. Not rubble, not wreckage. Absence. I was there. On duty patrol with 3 others. We heard the stone cry, then the lights went out. We turned, and where the chapel had stood was only a jagged hole. Like a mouth torn open in the skin of the hive. It didn't look like it had fallen. It looked like it had been peeled away. Like something reached in and took it. The weirdest part, no dust, no smoke, no heat signature, just silence. Like the building had been deleted. They sent in a probe. Mechanicus issued crawler unit, full Auspex scan. It didn't return. The signal just stopped, 12 meters in. Not blocked, not jammed, stopped. We tried dropping in rope. The rope dissolved after 6 minutes. No chemical residue, just gone. A black ring where the fibers ended. Then came the dreams. First the guardsman, then the pilgrims, then the chapel staff, those who hadn't been inside at the time. All of them reported the same thing. I saw the chapel, but it wasn't on our world anymore. It was upside down, and something was praying inside it. Something big, something with too many voices. Father Rek, the head priest, tried to rebuild a makeshift altar on the ruins. He laid out relics, chanted rites, lit incense. He got to the third line of the benediction of presence, and his mouth sealed shut. Physically, flesh grew over it. No blood, no scream, just skin, smoothing over his lips like wax over a candle. He clawed it open himself, died of shock 4 minutes later. Now no one goes near the site. We cordoned it off, marked it with purity banners and automated turrets. Doesn't matter, pilgrims still show up at night. They're always barefoot, always crying, always chanting prayers that don't exist in any lexicon. When questioned, they say the same thing. We heard the chapel calling us back. But it's not there. It's never been there. One officer tried to prove it. Showed old maps, sat footage, structure logs. He was right. Nothing remained. But when he was walking home, he looked over his shoulder and saw stained glass flickering in the distance. He never came in for his next shift. We found his boots near the chapel crater. Inside one of them was his tongue. Still warm, still twitching. The ecclesiarchy issued a notice. Structural failure under divine review. Report all sightings to authorized faith channels. The Mechanicus refused to comment. They've been unusually quiet. One tech priest was heard whispering, "Faith does not collapse on its own. Something pulls it out from under you." I think the chapel didn't collapse. I think it was invited somewhere else. And I think whatever took it is still praying. And maybe, just maybe, those prayers are being answered. The last supply ship was supposed to arrive 46 cycles ago. It didn't. No warp signal, no beacon ping, not even a faint afterglow of grav shadows. Just nothing. Like the shipping lane never existed. At first we rationed, then we reduced, then we sacrificed. Now we pray. The administratum issued a provisional report. Emergency reserves intact. Faith status, stable. Population condition, suboptimal but obedient. Lies. We've been scraping lichen off reactor walls for weeks. Grinding hab sludge into protein bricks. Boiling boots. Recycling corpse matter in secret. We're still starving. But the records say we're loyal. And that's all that seems to matter. Shrines have replaced their altars with ration bins. Offerings of spoiled food are stacked like icons. People pray before a can of corpse starch like it's a holy relic. One man bit into a ration scroll. He said it tasted like penance. He died smiling. I asked Sister Helva how she still had food. She looked at me, eyes blackened from lack of sleep, and whispered, "We don't eat. We remember eating. That's enough." I saw what she meant. Her table was empty, but she sat before it every day, fork and knife in hand, miming every movement. She looked thinner every week, but she never complained, never begged. She just said, "Faith is more filling than flesh." People say the statues are changing, growing thinner, more gaunt, hands stretched longer. One chapel claims its statue of the emperor now shows ribs. They've started wrapping it in blankets, singing lullabies, treating it like a starving child. Adept Gren performed a caloric intake audit on the remaining zones. When he presented the report, his voice broke. "We don't have enough food. We don't have enough fuel. We don't have enough medicine." He paused, then said, "But we have enough faith to starve." No one laughed. No one objected. He was promoted to mourner scribe the next day. His job is to record names. Just names. Not causes of death. Not eulogies. Not ranks. Just the fact that someone was once known. Some have stopped asking for food entirely. They ask for memory instead, not data. Memory, the feeling of a meal, the echo of warmth, the taste of salt on bread that never existed. We've started trading dreams. A daydream of soup, a fleeting smell of grilled lichen, the idea of sweetness. I traded a memory of my mother's barley broth for a broken candle. The candle doesn't burn, but it smells like wax. And that's enough. They say hallucinations of food are a symptom of terminal deprivation. But what if they're not? What if we're not hallucinating? What if something is feeding us, just not through the body? People have started to glow, not visibly, not literally, but they radiate. Calm. The ones closest to death. The ones who've stopped crying, stopped trembling. They speak like they've seen the Emperor himself, or something else, something that noticed their hunger and offered a different kind of meal. Preacher Dalmos vanished last night. His boots were still at the pulpit, his robes folded on the prayer mat. A single note sat where his chest would have been. The flesh forgets, but the soul remembers the feast. We're starving, but we're still loyal. We've replaced calories with ritual, meat with memory, warmth with worship. And when our stomachs scream, we pray louder. Because if the Emperor ever looks our way again, we want him to see bones that still believe. We used to whisper our prayers, soft chants, measured tones, words spoken into the quiet, like ripples cast across holy stillness. But now, the prayers scream. At first, it was just the children. They'd murmur litanies in their sleep, cry out the names of saints they'd never been taught, sing benedictions in frequencies that shorted Vox units. Then the adults followed. The first mass screaming began on cycle 97. Shrine Vox 6. A recorded it. Thousands of voices, chanting at once, all across the Hive, from Hab unit to Hive Spire. In unison, no coordination, no forewarning, just noise. Raw, desperate, faithful, too faithful. I reviewed the Vox log. I could barely listen for more than 30 seconds. It wasn't just sound. There was a presence in it, like something was listening from the other side, like every word was being caught, held, measured, and something was breathing between the syllables. We tried to calm the population. Command issued blanket sleep protocols, restricted sermons to text only, disabled shrine speakers, jammed unregistered Vox transmissions. Didn't matter. People just started carving their prayers onto walls, onto floors, onto each other. We've confiscated over 1,300 blades since then, some with teeth still caught in them. One woman etched a litany across her face, line by line, until her lips split open and her eyes rolled back. When Medici questioned her, she only said, "He can't hear us anymore, so we have to make him." The Arbites arrested preacher Seelan yesterday, not for heresy, for amplification without clearance. She had duct-taped 14 Vox units together and screamed the Credo Terror into a cliffside for 12 hours. By the time they dragged her down, her vocal cords were gone, but she was still mouthing the words. Her cell had a message scrawled on the wall. He hears volume, not virtue. Some think this is faith losing shape. I think it's faith adapting. The Emperor's silence is no longer interpreted as absence. It's become a test, a threshold. We believe if we shout long enough, loud enough, without end, he will break through the static. But what if something else does first? There have been returns, not supply shipments, not reinforcements. Voices, unclear, half-caught, dripping through static. They echo back our prayers, but wrong. Words twisted, litanies bent, meanings inverted. An example? One vox line replayed the hymn of unyielding resolve backwards. Another repeated the name of the Emperor 3,000 times, but used a different voice each time. Some of them weren't human. A child was born last week, first in months. She spoke as soon as her lungs filled. Not a cry, a prayer, in Old Gothic, eyes wide, unblinking. She kept saying, "I remember you, but not from this side." The mother died during childbirth. No wounds, no trauma, just drained, like her voice was pulled out along with the child. There are reports that the stone itself is beginning to hum, walls vibrating with silent litanies, pipes repeating psalms in Morse code, rust forming in the shape of imperial scripture. One pilgrim claims to have seen a crack in a chapel floor open like a mouth and pray along with him. He hasn't spoken since. We're told not to listen to the echoes, but the echoes know the prayers better than we do. They don't forget. They don't pause. They don't lose faith, even if they were never alive to begin with. The silence broke, and in its place, something listens, whether it's him or something pretending. We'll keep praying, because faith doesn't need confirmation, only echo. They don't scream anymore. That's how we knew something was wrong. Birth is pain. It always has been. You come into this world clawing, gasping, sobbing, or you don't come in at all. But these infants, they arrive quiet, too quiet, and when you try to make them cry, they stare, eyes open, lips shut, not pressed, sealed, flesh where mouth should be, smooth, perfect, wrong. It started in Hive Mid, then spread to Hive East, then North. Now, no sectors untouched. Mimicry blamed it on genetic decay, nutrient deficits, radiation echoes from a century-old reactor fire, but none of that explains the symmetry. Perfect seals, no scar, no stitching, like the mouth was never meant to be there. Preacher Harm claimed it was a sign of purity, said they were born without mouths so they could never speak heresy. Some believed him, until one of the newborns turned to look at him during a blessing rite and bled from the eyes. We've tried surgery, 29 attempts, 29 failures. The incisions close the moment they're made. Scalpels bend, flesh regrows like it's resisting, like something is preserving the silence. One medici said he saw writing beneath the skin, pulsing under the sealed lips, letters that weren't part of any alphabet. He was found 2 hours later, tongue bitten in half, still breathing, mouth wide open, empty. The children don't eat, don't drink, don't sleep. They just stare at walls, at corners, at nothing. Some twitch, others humming, not vocally, through vibration. Low rhythmic pulses. If you put your hand on their chest, you can feel it, like a chant. We've tried isolating them, no effect. Some pilgrims beg to touch them, claim they're blessed. Others whisper they're not children at all, just vessels, waiting to be spoken through. One tech adept brought an Auspex scanner to monitor neural activity. He collapsed during the third scan. His last recorded words, "It's not brainwaves, it's a transmission." Some of the sealed-mouthed children have started moving together, in formation. At night, they walk in circles, trace lines in the dirt, form patterns we can't decode. One pattern repeated across 3 sectors, a spiral with 13 points and one eye, always one, always watching. A woman from Sector Black cut open her own child's face, a sealed-mouthed daughter 6 days old. She was caught before finishing. She said, "He told me there's a message inside. I was just trying to hear it." She was executed for heresy. Her daughter, still alive, still silent. The wound healed, perfectly, like it had never been made. There's a rumor spreading through the lower spires. They say these children are replacements, not born, delivered, not by the Emperor, but by something else. Whatever's been listening to our prayers, it's answering back, and it's using these infants as terminals. I held one today, a boy, wrapped in a black cloth printed with the Aquila. He blinked once, and my vox bead fried in my ear. Sparks, blood, white noise, and beneath the static, a voice, not his, not mine, a whisper, "We are not your sons. We are the silence you left behind." That night, I had a dream. Rows of children, hundreds of them, floating, eyes glowing, mouths sealed shut, and behind them, something vast, something made of sound, not flesh, sound, a god of forgotten words, smiling with no face, and it whispered, "Faith isn't spoken anymore, it's installed." I woke up with blood leaking from my nose, 3 teeth missing, and a child's name carved into the inside of my palm, a name I didn't know until I checked the Mimicry logs. It was real, one of the sealed-mouth infants, still alive, still listening. They gathered beneath the broken arch of Shrine Sector Primus, 17 souls, wrapped in ragged robes, eyes glazed, fingers twitching from fasting-induced tremors. The preacher stepped up to the pulpit, if it could still be called that. The wood was split, the aquila cracked, the vox grill long since torn out. Still he stood, still he spoke. "He who does not hear," the crowd echoed, "still judges." The words cut the air like a blade through frost. It wasn't the official sermon, not from any book, not from any archived ecclesiarchy litany, but they all knew it, word for word, as if someone had taught them silently, or planted it beneath their dreams. The preacher's name was Vice, once a humble monastic, now a prophet of silence. He hadn't slept in 9 days, his tongue was split from overuse, his voice bled from the throat, like oil. Still, he preached, because something listened. The sermon was short, but powerful. He hears no litanies, he grants no signs, but he watches, and his silence is a blade. Then, the crowd screamed, not in pain, in answer. They screamed the words back, not through their mouths, through the walls. The metal echoed, pipes groaned, static crackled through rusted vox ports long since declared dead. A voice came through, not the preachers, not the crowds, something else, low, like thunder cracked open by teeth, and it said, "We remember judgment, but not the judge." One by one, the congregation collapsed, eyes rolled back, arms twisted, some laughed, some wept, some simply listened. Preacher Vice didn't move. He stared at the sky, mouth slack, blood dripping from lips that still trembled with the echoes of his own words. Someone recorded the whole thing, not with tech. No devices still worked in that shrine. They recorded it in memory, and the memory spreads. Now, across the Hive, people are preaching fragments of the same sermon. They say it without knowing where it came from. They chant it in sleep, scrawl it into walls, ash, skin, one infant, sealed mouth, unblinking, trace the sermon into soot with a single finger, without ever being taught. A new form of faith is taking shape, not codified, not centralized, infectious. We used to need ears to hear him. Now, only silence. Because even if the Emperor has forgotten this world, judgment still falls, and it wears the voice of those who no longer speak. It started with the wrong names. Every 40 cycles, the grave tithe is performed. Old corpses exhumed, cremated, ashes offered in procession, a cycle of humility and honor. The idea is simple. Death must make room for the living, a reminder that even the dead must serve the Imperium. But this time, it failed. Not the ritual, not the fire, not the machinery. The names failed. Gravekeeper Earthen opened the catacomb vault, and instead of silence, he heard a name, spoken clearly, once, from below. Earthen. He sealed the vault, refused to return, refused to explain, until he was found screaming 4 hours later, with grave ash poured into his ears. The next day we tried again. New gravekeeper, new rites, new list, same failure. This time, the dead weren't where they were supposed to be. The coffins were full, but the names on the records no longer matched the remains. Teeth didn't align. Augmetic serials were scrambled. Ident tags were replaced with prayers etched in blood. One body had 3 tongues, all still wet. Some were missing entirely. No sign of burial, no trace of remains. Just names, written on the inside of their caskets, as if the bodies had walked out and signed themselves out like inventory. And every 40 cycles since, the same thing, the same names, even if they were already cremated, already honored, already erased. The same names come back, like the planet refuses to forget them, like it's looping. One burned skull was catalogued 3 separate times across 9 years. Its teeth never changed. Its orbit tag always returned, and every single time, it died of starvation. An adept whispered what we're all thinking. We're not burying the dead anymore. We're burying memories, and memories rot differently. Worse, some of the names on the lists aren't dead yet. We found a living man, still breathing, still sane, whose name appeared on the tithe. He begged us to remove it. We did. The next day he was found curled in a fetal position, gasping dust, no wounds, just dead. His eyes were open, his mouth full of grave ash. One family's entire lineage reappeared on the tithe, from great-grandfather to unborn daughter. The daughter was still in the womb, still moving. The mother miscarried the next day, named her daughter before the breath, just like the list had written it. We tried purging the archives, deleting the old names, replacing the data, but the servitors keep restoring the records. No one programs them to do it. No one authorizes the cycles. But every night, the grave tithe resets. Same list, same errors, same dead. Again and again and again. Even now, I can hear the bells from the crematoria. Not the scheduled tolls, new ones. They ring at odd hours, always 13 times. Always in the voice of someone who died years ago. No one knows where the chimes come from. No speakers, no towers, no visible source. Just resonance, like the planet itself is remembering, like the soil learned how to mourn. We've started a new policy, silence the names. When someone dies, we don't record them. No funerals, no processions, no prayers. We bury them in ash. Let the planet forget. Let the warp pass over them. Let the memory die clean. But it never does. Their names always come back, etched in rust, sung in static, scratched into chapel pews. One showed up written in blood across the window of a child's room. The child wasn't dead, not yet. She is now. The grave tithe has become a clock, a countdown. But to what? I don't think the graves are filling. I think they're preparing. We no longer chant for salvation. We chant to fill the silence, and the silence is winning. It began small. Ritual recitations were always tradition. Shrine-born psalms, workshift litanies, passage rites. But lately, the words feel different in our mouths. Heavy, distant, like they were never meant for us. Or worse, like they've already been used. Some of the lines come out wrong now. We don't notice until we stop. When we listen to the recordings, if the vox even works, we hear the shift. Familiar litanies, bent, imperial praises replaced with absence, lines replaced with names, not ours, not anyone's we recognize. The emperor protects becomes the emperor forgets. Glory to terror becomes we are not known. We don't notice while saying them, but afterward our throats ache. Our ears hum with feedback. Some lose their voices for days. One priest, old and blind, recited from memory as he had every morning for 50 years. He finished in tears. Those weren't the words I learned, he whispered. He died that night, his tongue sealed to the roof of his mouth. A group of choir adepts tried to force tradition back into shape. They practiced the canticle of steel will for 5 straight hours, 12 singers. By hour 6, 3 of them had collapsed. By hour 7, 2 more were dead. The rest kept chanting, even after we removed them, even after sedation, even after burial. The tombs vibrate now, still humming the last line of the chant. They sing to nothing, but nothing hears. Some of us have begun writing new chants, on instinct, waking up mid-verse with blood on our fingers and phrases scrawled into rusted walls. I found one in the lift shaft, 37 lines long, written entirely in reversed high Gothic. No one remembers writing it, but we all knew how to repeat it. And when we did, the lights dimmed. The lift moved, even though its power core was gone, and the walls whispered. The whispers always come after the chant. That's the new pattern. like we're inputting code and something is processing it. We tried to silence the shrines, disabled the vox altars, burned the hymn books. Still they chant, children mouthing verses in their sleep, old men humming to walls, pilgrims clawing the words into their own skin. We chant in fear now, not for deliverance, not for duty, for survival, because the moment we stop, we hear what's waiting behind the silence, and it remembers us. One magos claimed it's a mimetic corruption, a warp-infected script, an echo that replicates itself through thought and repetition. We tried isolating him. He kept chanting, through the vox, through machine code, through the breathing vents. When we dismantled his larynx, the walls continued the verse. He's still in a sealed cube now, floating in null grav, but the cube hums, always in meter, always in rhythm. There is no silence now, only anticipation. The rituals keep feeding the void, and the void is getting clearer. We can hear it learning, adapting, using our chants as templates. One line returned to us last night, in our own dialect, in our own voices, but it wasn't ours. It said, "Faith is the frequency by which we tune the flesh." I haven't stopped humming since. I don't even like the sound, but the silence behind it is worse. At first we thought it was just bad record keeping. The shrines here are ancient, overbuilt and underfunded. It wouldn't be the first time someone miscounted a spire's height or forgot to log a sanctum repair. But this was different. It wasn't just one statue, it was all of them. I noticed it during the last procession. I pass the shrine of Saint Erinth every week, always have. His statue stands above the lower habilanes, right hand raised in benediction, left holding a bolt pistol. It was always a comfort, always measured at 14 meters. I don't know why I looked up that day. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was the way the sunlight hit the stone, making his eyes look wrong. But I looked up, and he wasn't 14 meters anymore. He was taller, much taller, too tall. I ran the scans, triple-checked every archive, no orders for expansion, no Mechanicus approvals, no structural alterations, just growth. Then came the others, Saint Velata's likeness in the marketplace, 12 meters taller, the Martyr Queen's ossified statue in the crypt lane, extended down into sub-level 9 through solid ferrocrete. No debris, no tunneling, just more statue, as if it had always been there. We called in the Magi. They examined the material. It was still stone, granite, marble, ceramite composites, unchanged, except one detail. Every sample was warm. Stone doesn't retain heat like that. Not naturally, not in the cold zones. But these did. They felt like they were breathing. Then came the changes. Saint Velatha's eyes used to look forward. Now they gazed down. Saint Erinth's bolt pistol was once holstered. Now it's aimed directly at the shrine's congregation. They said we were imagining it, until someone checked the prayer alcoves carved into their robes. Dozens more now. Each alcove bore a name. The names of people who'd gone missing in the last 6 months. Names that had never been etched into stone, not by any sculptor, not by any human hand. The statues are changing themselves. One woman swore she saw her deceased husband carved into the palm of a statue's hand. When she touched the stone, she went blind. The next day the statue's hand was closed. We tried containment. The Arbites placed purity seals. The Ecclesiarchy surrounded them with sacred barriers. The Mechanicus tried to nullify their mass. None of it held. Saint Velatha's shrine was surrounded by 5-meter fences. The next morning, her statue was outside the fence. Same pose, same expression. No damage to the barrier. It didn't break through. It wasn't there when we built the fence. It was somewhere else. And then it wasn't. We're starting to believe the statues are not statues at all. They are monuments to memory, and memory here is warped. One tech adept suggested they are psychic monuments, sustained by belief. Every whispered prayer, every glance upward, every chant spoken near their base. It feeds them, and they remember. Not the saints they represent, but us. They are mirrors. We believe them holy, and so they take on holiness. But in this place, in this silence, They've taken on something else. One of the statues sprouted arms, 6 of them, crossed behind its back. No sculptor did this. It grew like a tumor, overnight. The arms were all reaching downward toward where people pray, like it was trying to pull them up or drag them in. The governor ordered their destruction. Heavy melter teams were dispatched. The first squad made it to the base of St. Galmore's statue. Only 3 made it back. They didn't fire a shot. They didn't speak. They simply walked backward, eyes wide, whispering. He wasn't looking at us before. When we checked their Auspex footage, there was nothing there. No statue, no team, only sound. A slow grinding chant, like stone being taught to sing. We've stopped trying to destroy them. We don't even speak near them anymore. But it doesn't matter. They keep growing. Some rise by centimeters each day. Others stay still for weeks, then surge upward like they're trying to reach orbit. Some stretch down into the hive, into levels that were never mapped, into corridors that didn't exist last week. And always the same thing. New names, etched into the stone. Not names of saints, not martyrs. United States. And there's something else. Every night the statues move. We don't see them move. We just wake up to their new shapes. Sometimes their arms are different. Sometimes the heads have turned. One morning, every statue in Hive Beta was looking in the same direction, straight toward the Vox Tower. Later that day, the tower received its first signal in months. A whisper, just 2 words. Keep chanting. We don't know what's growing in those statues anymore. But it's not faith, it's not remembrance, it's not even stone. It's something else, something alive, something that's been waiting to be seen. It's been 37 months since the last sanctioned landing. No trade, no resupply, no reinforcements, and no message from Terra. The sky has been empty, the ports dry, the landing pads rusting in silence, like wounds the stars forgot to close. So when the alarm klaxon buzzed, when the old Auspex towers flickered to life, we ran to the surface like starved dogs to a thrown bone. They said something was coming in. No call sign, no transponder, just mass, movement, shape, something descending. We waited for the sky to crack, waited for the hiss of re-entry, the burn of a lander's belly against ash-clouded wind. We waited, and nothing came, until dawn. The sun broke the smog for just a moment, and the bones were already there. We didn't hear it land, didn't see it arrive, but the platform was covered in bodies, or what was left of them. Bones, fresh, white, arranged in careful patterns across the ferrocrete, like a pilgrimage frozen in time, like they died mid-kneel. Some still had scraps of clothing, ecclesiarch robes, pilgrim mantles, even a few tech priest bands long since rusted, but no blood, no signs of violence, just perfect white bone, laid out as if they walked there and laid down by choice. And one thing more, every skull was facing upward, mouth open, not in fear, in worship. We tried to log them, catalog them, but the autoquills jammed, the PICT scanners overheated. Every attempt to record them failed, but the bones remained. A servo skull captured one usable image before its lens exploded. We decoded the PIC feed hours later. It showed the landing pad from above. The bones weren't random. They were shaped, a pattern, a symbol, the same spiral seen carved into the skin of the sealed-mouth infants. But this time, the spiral was made of vertebrae, and in the center, not a skull, a vox bead. We thought it was tech detritus, until it activated, all on its own. No signal should be able to transmit through the warp-dead sky. No channel should be open, but the bead whispered, over and over, one line. We made it to him. He was not there. The bead dissolved before we could isolate the signal. Not crumbled, not shattered, dissolved. Like it had never been real, like it had been written into our expectation, and nothing more. The bones, still there, unmoving. And each day, one vanishes. No wind, no theft, no decay, just gone. The adepts say it's entropy. The priests say it's the Emperor's mercy. But the rest of us, we know something is taking them back. One piece at a time. Worse, There's a new set of footprints leading away from the landing pad. Bare feet, too small for an adult, too sure for a child. We followed them for 7 kilometers before they vanished at the edge of a dry aqueduct, and there, carved into the rock, were the words, "Faith is not answered, faith is measured." That night, the old landing lights powered on. No source, no energy, just lights, flashing in sequence, as if waiting for something else to land. But nothing ever did, just the bones, just the silence, just the feeling that we were being watched, from above, or maybe from beneath, because the landing pad isn't stone anymore. We tapped it, we drilled it, and underneath, hollow. There's something underneath it now, something breathing or remembering, because every day as the bones vanish, we hear new whispers from below. To dream of holy terror is a blessing, to wake and remember it is not there is heresy. Forbidden entry, Adeptus Astra Telepathica sleep memory registry. She wasn't anyone important, not a priest, not an officer, not a psyker, just a woman named Kess. She worked in the dust recycling unit near Vault Spire Gamma. Same shift every cycle, same meals, same dull prayers before lights out, no record of instability, no history of visions, until she woke screaming and claimed she had seen terror, not in metaphor, not in liturgical context, in a dream, a vision, she said, clear, pure. I stood above it, she whispered, and it was ash. We tried to dismiss it. Hallucinations are common in the hive, toxic fumes, fasting, stress. But then she drew it. She carved the dream into the wall with her fingernails until the tip snapped off. Over and over, in spiraling circles, she etched the surface of her hab cell. Not symbols, not scripture, stars, a star map, and we recognized it. The soul system. The render was exact, too exact. There were no visual references that accurate anywhere in the hive. Even the astropaths have only echoes of soul's truth. But Kess had drawn every orbital ring, every station ruin, every moon shadow, as if she had stood above it. Except terror wasn't there. Where the throne world should be, only a hollow sphere, outlined, lined with broken towers, but empty. No mountains, no oceans, no continent plates, just dust, and at the center, a single black dot, with one word written beneath it, unremembered. They tried to silence her. The Adeptus Ministorum called for penance, said she had insulted the throne, tried to flay the words from her, but she wouldn't stop speaking. She didn't scream, she didn't beg, she just kept repeating the phrase, "I was shown what he sees when he sleeps." They locked her away, but the guards started dreaming, and they saw the same thing, not just terror, other worlds, holy Mars, gone, Hydrafur, cracked, Macragge, drowned. They woke crying, screaming, or silent, with blood dripping from their ears. One whispered, "There's no Imperium left, only its echo." So we checked the warp charts, requested system updates. Nothing came back, no signals, no confirmations, no denials, just static, like terror, had stopped transmitting, or worse, like the galaxy had stopped existing where we were supposed to see it. Kess's final message was left scrawled in blood on her cell wall. She used the bone of her own finger to write it. 5 words. He has stopped looking back. We buried her without rites, but her dream didn't die. The star map has been found in 4 other locations since. 1 etched into the chapel floor, 1 burned into a psyker's eye, 1 whispered into a Vox channel no longer connected to anything, and the last? It grew, a perfect rendering of the soul system, 40 meters wide, carved into the roof of Vault Spire Gamma. No tools, no access, no scaffolding, just there, overnight, burned into the ceiling like a brand, and at the center, again, no terror, just the word, forgotten. The ecclesiarchy says it's heresy, but they don't deny what they feel when they look at it. A pull, a soulier like staring into the moment before waking. One cardinal claimed Kess's vision was a trap, a warp mirror, something reflecting our own decay, but the psychers say something else, that dreams are bleeding through from other realities, that some corner of the warp has begun recording the death of the Imperium. one death at a time, one forgotten world after another, and we're next on the list. Because the dreams are spreading, people mutter about cities that were never built, battles that were never fought. Some say they remember winning wars that don't exist in any record. Others say the stars above us don't match what's in the archives. So either we are dreaming, or the galaxy is. And the Emperor, he is not in the dream anymore. It started as dust. We thought it was another collapse. Old hab layer gave out. Maybe a refinery fire up Hive. Maybe a reactor rupture. We didn't care. Ashfall is normal here, but not like this. This ash didn't fall like snow. It drifted with purpose, floated, swirled, as if it had somewhere to go. And the first time we noticed, it was choosing during morning prayer. 64 citizens gathered at the central shrine, bent knees, lowered heads. 3 minutes into the chant, ash began to drift down from the ceiling. No wind, no warning, just falling. Only it didn't touch everyone. It moved around some, avoided others, coated the shoulders of only those who chanted without hesitation. The unsure, the distracted, not a fleck landed on them. We thought it was symbolic, a blessing. The ecclesiarchy called it the Emperor's mark, until the bodies began to smolder, not burn, smolder, heat from within, flesh blackening from the inside, no flames, no source, just ash, melting back into bone. The first death was a man named Halvrik. He always muttered through litanies. The ash never touched him. But later, he went outside during the next storm and didn't return. We found only his boots. Inside them, pale dust, still warm. It keeps happening. People the ash avoids. They don't last long. They vanish, or burn, or simply crumble, as if their memory erases itself. It doesn't just fall during prayer now. It falls in corridors, in sleeping cells, in lifts, and every time, it selects. One child reached out to catch it, said it was pretty. It burned her tongue to speak. Now she only hums, and the ash follows her like a halo. We ran all specs on the particles. No known composition, not industrial, not biological. It's self-replicating, warp-active, but not chaotic, not yet. More like observant. The Mechanicus quarantined 3 ash-covered workers. By the time we opened the chamber again, the ash had arranged itself into text. High Gothic, a single phrase. They remembered. One preacher tried to claim this was proof of purity, said only the faithful are marked, said it was our reward for endurance. That afternoon, the ash consumed him mid-sermon, didn't even wait for the amen. We tried closing the vents. Didn't matter. It doesn't drift in from outside anymore. It forms from shadow, from silence, from doubt. We think it's not actually ash. It's what's left of us. When the faith burns away, the soul calcified, condensed into memory and weight. And those who still believe, they wear it like a crown. But what are they believing in? The Emperor, the Imperium, or the thing behind the veil? Watching how we respond to abandonment. It's raining ash right now. I can see it outside my hab unit. It doesn't hit the walls, doesn't fall on the soil, just hovers, waiting for us to speak or stay silent. And I don't know what's worse, that it falls only on the faithful, or that it might mean we're already dead and only the faithful are still being remembered. We used to keep records, scrolls, data slates, vox logs, each death accounted for, each martyr honored. That was before the forgetting began. First it was minor clerical anomalies, names vanished from headstones, prayer beads without assigned saints, sanctioned servitors without task logs. Then came the shrines, empty of plaques, statuettes missing inscriptions, memorial altars stripped of their purpose. We assumed vandalism, or worse, heresy, but it was happening too fast. One Arbite's precinct had an entire wall dedicated to the fallen, engraved names in plasteel, thousands. One day it was there, the next, blank. No damage, no soot, just polished steel, reflecting only the faces of the living. Then came the rot in, the Vox records, We played back final messages from guard squads lost in the lower hives, but the names, the ranks, the designations gone, not redacted, not distorted, absent, like no one had ever spoken them. We traced it to a deeper failure. The cogitator cores were intact, but the data purged without overwrite, a perfect void, as if the system knew to leave no trace. We assigned a tech adept, Garris Vol, to investigate. He had an eidetic memory, trained in cryptographic retention, flawless record. 3 days into the task, he submitted a full log of vanished martyrdom records spanning a decade. The report was 14,082 entries long. He was due to deliver a backup copy. In person, he never arrived. His quarters were empty, no signs of struggle, but on his cot, a single strip of parchment, blank, under microscan, text, but not in ink, scored into the fibers by heat, readable only at a certain angle, one phrase. Memory does not survive where belief is conditional. Since then, the problem has worsened. Entire sectors hold graves with no names, mausoleums that echo when you speak inside them. One worker entered Shrine Crypt 3L and came out, sobbing. I walked through thousands, but no one ever died there. Some shrines won't let you in if you don't remember who you're praying for. That's not a metaphor, that's a physical barrier. Doors refuse to open, lumen strips won't light, even auto incense burners go cold. But if you speak the name of a martyr, a real one you remember, the whole room flares to life. The only problem? We remember fewer names every day. The ecclesiarchy initiated Project Saint Recall, public readings, holy roll calls, chanting the names of the faithful fallen. It worked, briefly, until people began forgetting the names mid-sentence. One priest's tongue went black when he tried to read aloud. Another fell into silence halfway through and never spoke again. Not from pain, not from fear, just emptiness. He no longer remembered what speaking was. One psyker believes we've passed a threshold, that faith alone no longer sustains martyrdom, that now we are being tested not for our loyalty, but for our memory. Because without records, there are no saints, and without saints, there's no line between death and deletion. We tried tattooing names on our skin. Didn't work. The ink fades or turns into gibberish. One woman tattooed her brother's death oath across her chest. She woke the next day to find only this phrase inked there. He was never yours. The worst is this. We can't remember the names of those who died this week, even if they were close, even if we loved them, even if we saw them fall. We buried Father Silas yesterday, old preacher known to all, faith unshakable. His body was burned per rite. We gathered, we mourned, but when the Vox recorder asked for the deceased's name, none of us could answer, no one, not even his daughter. She just cried and said, I remember loving him, but not who he was. Now we whisper our own names before sleep. We speak them into broken Vox units. We carve them into door frames, scrawl them into dust. Anything to be remembered, to not become just another body the Imperium forgot before it even noticed we were gone, because something is watching, something that feeds on the lost, on those not sanctified, not inscribed, not remembered. It's not death that wins here. It's the erasure that comes after, and it has no name, because we've already forgotten it. You can feel it in your teeth. That's how we started describing it. The silence. It wasn't empty anymore. It had texture, a shape behind the quiet, a vibration, not sound, not pressure, just presence. We used to blame the malfunctioning Vox relays. Too much static, not enough relay power. But we stopped trying to fix them, because even when the equipment worked, nothing came through, and not the kind of nothing that happens when a channel's dead. Not that passive hum. This was a void that pushed back, like something was listening, or worse, choosing not to answer. They tested the backup systems, cranked the gain, switched frequencies, built a full choir of psychers to reach across the warp. All they got was static, but not normal static. Some of them said the gaps between the white noise were too symmetrical, mathematically precise, as if someone was editing the silence. One Vox officer described it best. It feels like a conversation that already happened, and someone cut out all the parts we were supposed to hear. The psychers stopped trying after that. They called it the blank chorus, said it wasn't warp interference. It was deliberate, a mute pattern, targeted. We weren't disconnected, we were excluded. That same day, 5 of the oldest Vox towers blinked offline, just shut down. No overload, no breach, just gone. But something stayed in their place, a hum, low, droning, steady. Even with no power, the towers vibrated, and every so often, they pulse, not light, not heat, just awareness, like they were remembering something. One engine seer crawled inside Tower Gamma 9 to diagnose the source. He never came out. The drone stopped. When we pulled him out days later, he was still alive, but his ears were gone. Not cut, not burned, just missing, as if never there. He kept writing one phrase on the floor with his fingertips. It wants the quiet. After that, people stopped speaking in the tower districts. At first by superstition, then by instinct, then by force. Because if you spoke too loudly in those places, something answered. Not words, not voice, but echo, twisted, delayed, wrong. A woman whispered her son's name near the old Vox chapel. 3 days later, the Vox replayed it back in her son's voice. But he was already dead, had been, for years. It's not just repetition anymore, it's replacement. We stopped broadcasting prayers. The silence swallowed them. We stopped logging names. The silence unwrote them. We tried to scream into it, and it learned how to scream back. But the worst is what we hear now. Not static, not absence, just faint phrases, not from terror, not from the Imperium, from here, from inside. The Hive, lines we never said, events we never lived. One day, the Vox declared, day 44, the planet has been accepted. But we'd never numbered the days like that. No one had. And accepted by whom? Then came the incident at Deep Vault Vox Spire, 2K. The entire facility went silent. No breach. No atmospheric collapse. Just absolute quiet. No motion, no heat, signature, no trace of human life. But the Vox kept transmitting, looping, a single phrase. The silence is the offering, and the offering has been accepted. It wasn't a message, it was a response, which means something had been listening this entire time. We turned off every remaining transmitter, ripped the wiring, shut down relay stations, destroyed every frequency calibration slate, and for one breathless moment, silence returned. True silence, not humming, not pulsing, just stillness. But then the walls vibrated. No Vox, no relays, just the stone. Like it was carrying a signal without being asked to. And in that vibration, we heard words. One, then two, then a full phrase rising through the bones of the hive. You can stop speaking now. We have your silence. We haven't transmitted since. We don't even speak much anymore. Even our thoughts feel louder than we're comfortable with, because whatever we're broadcasting now, it's not coming from transmitters. It's coming from us. He started speaking backwards on the 47th day of silence. Not during prayer, not under stress, just routine. Operator Tyvan had been stationed at Vox Spire Delta 7 for 3 years. Steady, predictable. A man who once reprimanded a subordinate for sneezing near a receiver. That day, his colleague walked in and offered him recaf. Tyvan didn't blink, didn't look up, just said, "Senth Gil Nimiknat," and sipped his drink. We thought it was a joke. It wasn't. He kept doing it. Everything he said, every phrase, every word, backwards. But with no awareness, he didn't notice. When someone told him, he looked confused, spoke again, still in reverse. We recorded him, ran all specs through every audio channel, confirmed it. It wasn't a simple reversal. It wasn't just hello becoming hola. It was syntax, structure, context, as if time had inverted, but only for his speech. The psyker stationed nearby heard the playback and fainted. When he woke, he wrote a single word on his slate, responding. We asked, to what? He said, nothing. Just turned pale and whispered, not to us. Tyven didn't stop. If anything, he accelerated. His tone became agitated, urgent. He began speaking without pause, without breath, reverse sentences spilling like a broken record. We tried restraining him. He screamed, still backwards, and the sound triggered a feedback loop in every dormant Vox system. On the level, systems that had been deactivated, disconnected, powered down, they all flared to life, just long enough to echo his voice, not reversed, played forward, but it wasn't what he'd said. It was something else entirely. We heard you forget. We remember differently. Memory is not yours to store. Then silence. Everything went dark again. Tyven collapsed. Blood ran from his ears, but his lips kept moving. No sound this time, just mouthing, endless motion. We put him in an isolation cell, fed by tube, no vocal interaction. And yet, 3 nights later, the Vox in sub-level theta crackled. A message, him speaking backwards again. He wasn't near the system, but his voice was, saying something we couldn't pass until we reversed it and heard they forgot our names. We learned how to speak without them. After that, it spread. First, 3 other Vox operators started experiencing reverse speech episodes. Then unrelated citizens, children muttering during sleep, mini-storm preachers delivering entire sermons in inverted cadence. Not just language, meaning was unraveling. People began hearing reversed messages in their own thoughts. One woman reported that every time she tried to pray, her own voice answered, "He is not listening, but we are." The ecclesiarchy tried to ban reverse speech, claimed it was a psychic echo, a test of purity, declared any reversed litany heretical, burned tapes, cleansed Vox banks, silenced sermons. But you can't stop what's inside the walls. The Hive now hums, not with sound, with anti-sound. Every empty corridor, every closed door, a resonance of phrases played backward until they become reflections, not voices, not memory, just evidence that we once tried to speak. Some are starting to question whether our thoughts are even our own, if our dreams are inverted broadcasts sent from a time before memory, or from a time after the Emperor stopped remembering us. And Tyven, still alive, but he doesn't speak anymore. He just writes, and his script reversed mirror text forms a circle around his cell. The same phrase repeated, if we speak the silence forward, they will come. He doesn't say who they are, but we feel them now, in every reversed whisper, in every forgotten name, in every moment we think we understand what's being said, and then realize it's not meant for us at all. They tried to find us, that's what they told us. Logis adepts from the Munitorum, astropaths from Segmentum Command, Chartist captains with ancient maps on vellum and star maps etched into bone. They looked for our planet and couldn't find it. Not metaphorically, not politically, literally. We weren't listed, not on the most current Segmentum charts, not on the backup archives, not on the deep void archives stored on cryoslate, preserved since the Great Crusade. We were gone. Our sector still exists. The system has coordinates, the stars match, the orbital rings are stable, but our world, unnamed, uncatalogued, like it was never colonized, like the Emperor never sent his light here, which is a lie. We have records, shrines, hymns, statues carved in the God Emperor's image, older than any Hive on world. We were faithful, we remembered, but apparently no one else did. The first to notice was a Chartist captain named Yareth Groan. He docked above world to drop off tithes. 2 cycles ago, routine, until his navigators pointed something out. This isn't on the log. They meant the map, but they also meant something deeper. Groan tried to transmit coordinates back to his command fleet, got a garbled return, pinged the Segmentum beacon, received a 404 class void echo, a looped response normally reserved for lost systems, the kind consumed by warp storms or exterminatus. But we hadn't been touched, not bombed, not swallowed by the void, still here, still breathing, just erased. He pulled every scrap of cartographic record he had, paper, slate, etched glass, nothing. We asked him what he saw in our orbit logs. He hesitated, then showed us. Blank ring, a void, no moons, no traffic, no planetary signature, just black. But he was here. His ship physically orbited our world. We waved at his cameras, fed him from our agri-spires. One of his crew even took a walk through Hive Ravel's mid-spires, but none of it recorded. The footage, black screen, the feeds worked before and after, but the hours spent on our soil, just hiss. He panicked, tried to flee, but his engines jammed for 6 hours. His navigators went blind, and when he finally broke orbit, the last transmission we heard was a whisper. They won't let me remember. He never came back. His ship, the Dawn's Tax, was listed as lost in the warp, 2 parsecs from here, and it hasn't been seen since. We sent an astropath ourselves, our last one. She reached out, cried blood mid-transmission, said she saw something staring back from between the lines of the star maps, said it wasn't warp, it was absence. Then she died, but not like psychers usually die. No fire, no implosion, no psychic backlash. She just stopped. Her organs were still there, her body whole, but her name gone from every record. Even her death slate just says blank. The administratum sent a survey drone. We watched it descend through the upper atmosphere. It never landed. Mid-descent, its signal cut. When recovered, the drone reported only this: unlogged gravity anomaly, no planetary mass detected, reassigned survey to real coordinates. The drone thought we didn't exist, and maybe it's right, because more and more, we feel like shadows. Our own maps glitch, our archives go blank, our children's school books lose the name of the planet by sunrise. We used to be Varelia Delta 9, then just Delta 9. Now, even our local cartographia prints maps that label us simply unmarked. We try to say the name out loud, but it chokes in our throats. People cough, stumble, forget what they were saying. One preacher declared the old name during Mass. He was struck silent mid-word. Later he swore. I could see the syllables floating in the air, but something was eating them. And then there are the stars. They don't match anymore. We used to chart our faith to the constellations, to the holy points of navigation. Now the sky is wrong. A familiar shape might form, only to blink and scatter. Coordinates spiral, compass apps spin endlessly. A navigator tried to carve new paths. He scratched a star map into his arm with a cogknife. 2 nights later, the skin burned clean. No scars, just untouched flesh. We're still here, but we're not on anything. No chart, no memory, no list of tithes, no record of debt, no proof of service, not even as a failure. Because the Emperor doesn't punish us, he simply no longer includes us. They said his name was Talvek, a lay brother, one of the last self-flagellants still loyal to the shrines that hadn't collapsed or gone silent. He wandered Hive Trask for nearly a decade, flogging his own back with ritual chains, never spoke much, but the people respected him. He was a reminder of the old faith, when suffering had shape, when pain still had purpose. But last week he started to speak again. Not sermons, not litanies, just one thing, over and over. Delta 9, Sector Viridian Theta, Segmentum Pacificus, Delta 9th Sector Viridian Theta, Segmentum Pacificus, over and over, all day, every hour. His voice cracked, his lips split, his teeth rattled, but he never stopped. At first, we thought it was desperation, a plea to be remembered, a last-ditch effort to anchor us to the Imperium's grid, until we realized he wasn't praying to the Emperor. He was reporting. He didn't look upward. He stared at walls, at Vox terminals, at cold tiles, at mirrors. Sometimes he screamed, the coordinates. Other times he whispered them like secrets. We tried to stop him. The local Arbites detained him for disrupting shrine protocols. They muzzled him. Still, the sound came. Muffled, choking, relentless. Delta 9, Sector Viridian Theta. They sedated him. He kept whispering in his sleep. A tech adept ran an R-spec scan, found micro-vibrations in his bones. His marrow was pulsing. In code. The coordinates weren't just in his mouth anymore. They were inside him. That night, the Vox towers in the southern reaches activated. Unauthorized signal. The same phrase, over and over. But not just from the Vox. From every speaker, old HAB speakers, train station alert systems, servo skull chimes, even the static from broken pict screens. All of them, repeating his coordinates in his voice. We locked him away in Isolation Vault 3C, lead-lined, soundproofed, air-fed from a silent cycle, but even there, we heard it, through the walls, through the floor, even inside our dreams. Then, on the third day, he stopped. Silence, total, not even breathing. When we checked the vault, he was on the floor, blood soaked into the concrete. He had bitten off his own tongue, but not from madness, from defiance. His hands were smeared in blood and he'd scrawled on the wall. They kept answering, but it wasn't the Imperium. We never figured out who they were. But the Vox confirmed something worse. Those coordinates, they weren't stable. They kept drifting. Small changes, a digit inverted, a sector flipped, a quadrant transposed, like something was trying to jam the signal, or worse, rewrite the location itself. By the time we checked the Imperial Cartographica again, our sector had been reclassified as unregistered subspace drift. No longer fixed, no longer real. Our coordinates, once so precise, were now labeled discrepant anomaly, possibly recursive, as if the location kept looping, turning in on itself, forgetting its own shape. Now people speak in numbers without realizing. Children wake up muttering sequences that match long-range warp coordinates. A dying man recited our system's designation backwards. A woman carved the number 9 into her face, over and over claiming, "If I don't mark it, I'll vanish." We tried broadcasting again. One final emergency pulse into the void. Just once. Full strength, reinforced, sanctioned. Prayer transmission with our last astropathic imprint. We received no answer, except one. A quiet return signal, just static, until we slowed it down, adjusted the frequency, filtered it through 11 Vox levels. Then a voice emerged, software familiar. It was Talvex. No coordinates, no planet, only mouths that forgot why they ever needed names. He's been dead for 6 days, so we stopped trying to broadcast. We don't say our location anymore. We burn our maps. Because we're starting to suspect we're not where we think we are. We're just what's left of a place that already forgot itself. And the more we speak the name, the more something else speaks it with us. And every time it does, the sky above shifts again, a little colder, a little more wrong. The first time it happened, no one noticed. Mass at Shrine Centralis midday, routine, same sermon, same cadence, same hymns. But afterwards, someone checked the Vox logs. They found something strange. The entire sermon, from the first word of the blessing to the final chant, had already played the night before. Verbatim. Same pauses, same coughs from the congregation, even the same flicker in the lumen globe above the pulpit. It wasn't a replay. The Vox system had been disconnected. No backup feed, no data echo, but the words matched exactly, as if the preacher had unconsciously recited a recording of something he hadn't lived. The next day it happened again. Not just the sermon, the crowd, same reactions, same child crying during the prayer of absolution, same latecomer slipping into the last pew, same slip of the tongue during the third canticle. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a loop. We tested it, allowed a third mass, identical, frame by frame, word by word. Even the incense smoke curled in the same pattern. At first, we thought it was a psyker's echo, some warp residue clinging to the chapel. We closed it for cleansing, purified with oil and ash, burned the pulpit, smashed the Vox system. But it kept happening, even when we moved the mass to another shrine. The The same exact pattern played out, not just once, every time. A pattern, self-sustaining, self-replicating, a ritual inside a memory, playing back on a loop no one initiated. We tried changing the liturgy, had the preacher read from different verses. He tried, but when he opened his mouth, the same words came out. And when he stopped, his lips kept moving, silent, mouthing what he was supposed to say. He didn't remember afterward, collapsed during confessional, muttered, "We don't get to choose anymore. The loop has settled." Not every shrine experienced it, only the ones still structurally intact, the ones most deeply entrenched in tradition. The newer ones, collapsed or repurposed, stayed quiet, but the old shrines, they began to hum at night. Resonance beneath the floor, candles relit themselves, stained glass shifted subtly, images of saints fading, replaced with blank silhouettes. One day, we sent servo skulls to monitor Shrine Vestra. No attendees allowed, just observation. When mass time arrived, the servo feeds showed empty pews, no sound, no sermon, nothing. But the vox inside the skulls picked up audio, laughter, chanting, the full mass, playing to an absent crowd, except the acoustics didn't match an empty room. There were bodies there, even if we couldn't see them, even if no one had walked through the doors. A few of us tried attending anyway. 15 guardsmen, 2 psychers, 4 preachers. They sat in silence, waiting to see if the loop would trigger. It did, only this time it skipped. The same sentence repeated 3 times. "We are forgiven, we are forgiven, we are for." A sudden jolt. The chandeliers fell. 3 died instantly. The rest tried to run, but the doors were sealed. They reported seeing shadows in the stained glass, figures that looked like themselves, mouths open, speaking in reverse. Only 2 survivors, both deaf now, and both draw the same shape in the air every day, a circle, split by a line, the symbol of closed recursion. Since then, attendance at Mass has plummeted. People avoid the shrines, those who still go wear blindfolds, or earplugs, or both. But it doesn't matter, the loop gets in. You don't need to hear it, or see it, you just remember it. And the next time Mass is called, your body moves without asking. Some have stopped resisting. They say if we let the loop finish, it will finally stop. Others say it's not a loop at all. It's a lure, a shape designed to attract something else, a rhythm that opens, a gate between memory and matter, and every repetition sharpens it. One psyker tried to break it. He screamed during the 7th sermon loop. Pure psychic defiance. He burst into flame mid-shout. The flames wrote a message on the walls before they faded. "You don't attend the Mass. You are the Mass." The rest of us, we don't speak much of it anymore. We avoid the shrines, but they continue without us. The bells ring at the right hour, the incense burns, and the voice speaks. No mouth, no preacher, just a message echoing through the hive's bones. This is not worship. This is remembering, and memory is sacred. He gouged them out with a rosarius. That's what the altar servitors reported. Preacher Solon was conducting midnight confessionals in shrine moonlight. Calm, soft-spoken, as he always had been. Then, without hesitation or ceremony, he removed the rosarius from around his neck and pushed it into his own eyes. The thorns meant for symbolic penance pierced deep. He didn't scream, didn't cry. He smiled and whispered, "He doesn't need me to see anymore." He survived, somehow, but he refused all aid, fought off Medicaid, bit a nurse's hand to the bone, sat back down in his wooden seat at the edge of the altar, still bleeding, still smiling, still speaking. Only now when he spoke, he wasn't preaching. The words were structured, formal, like broadcast instructions. Lines of code passed through old sermons, signal integrity aligned, receptor nodes open, faith echo stabilized. The word will transfer. It was like he was transmitting something, or receiving, or both. The local tech priests tried to analyze it, claimed his speech patterns matched an ancient protocol format, one last used by pre-imperial beacon systems. in the age of strife, which made no sense. Because Solène had never even touched a data slate, we interviewed the man who found him, Deacon Aerth. Shaking, hollow-eyed, he said he heard Solène muttering something strange before. The self-blinding began. I saw something looking back through the stained glass. It blinked when I blinked. And then, it didn't stop. After that, no one entered Shrine Moonlight alone. Even during daylight, the inside felt wrong, too symmetrical, too expectant. Solène didn't stop preaching. He sat at the altar day and night, blind sockets weeping blood, lips reciting liturgies that weren't in any book. The words kept changing, as if dictated by something else. One phrase stood out. It repeated for 6 days straight. Faith is not vision. Faith is feedback. No one understood it, until the echo phenomenon began. Several shrine-goers began hearing themselves repeating Solène's words long after they'd left, in their sleep, while eating, while walking. Some claimed the words weren't even in their native tongue, but they understood them, felt them, like an infection of meaning, not sound. One woman tore off her earpiece mid-sermon, screamed, "He's preaching inside my head." Others reported dreams of standing at a pulpit, blindfolded, surrounded by a congregation of shadows. Each time they opened their mouths in the dream, Solène's words came out. Each time they blinked, the shadows moved closer. It spread, a form of psychic contagion perhaps, or some deeper recursion, a preacher who no longer needed eyes, because he was now looking through all of us. We tried removing him. Forcefully, he went limp, cooperative, didn't speak for the first 24 hours in custody. Then, without warning, he stood, though shackled, and recited a sermon that broke the minds of 4 attending scribes. One scribe stabbed his own ears with quill pens. Another wrote the phrase "see me" over and over until the parchment bled. The third tried to eat the Vox recorder. The fourth simply sat in the corner, eyes open, lips repeating, "The Emperor still hears, but not from here." When Solène was returned to his shrine, he resumed preaching. No interruption, no awareness of where he'd gone, just continuation of the same impossible homily, as if no time had passed. The last lines we caught before the recorders failed were, "The blind lead the faithful, the forgotten lead the blind, and through them we will re-enter memory." Since then, the icon above his altar has changed. It used to be the Emperor triumphant. Now the face is worn smooth, blank, no eyes, no expression, just a suggestion of a mouth, open wide. Visitors have reported seeing something move behind the icon. Some say it's just the candlelight. Others say it's Solène's shadow, but mirrored, inverted, and watching. We've begun blinding our own preachers, not out of reverence, out of fear, because those with eyes begin to see too much, and those who see too much begin to preach what doesn't belong to us. But no matter how many eyes we close, he still speaks. Not Solène, it, the voice behind the voice, the sermon behind the scripture, and it no longer asks for belief, it assumes it. It started with a blessing. A mother kneeling beside her child's sickbed in Sector 12, Mimicry, whispering the old prayers, hands trembling, voice raw. Then the child sat up, eyes wide, not from healing, not from faith, but because he heard something, a whisper, from the wall, from the lights, from the air itself, and it said, "I hear you. I remember you." Not the Emperor's voice, something else, too soft, too kind, and yet, wrong in the marrow. Since then, hundreds have reported hearing answers, but not to the prayers they speak, to the ones they think. Unspoken words answered in precise, intimate detail. A miner trapped in a cave-in whispered for forgiveness as the rubble crushed him. He was found alive 3 days later, surrounded by untouched stone. He claimed, "I didn't dig out." The walls moved. A priestess mourning her sister wept into an unlit shrine. The candles all flared at once. In a voice like her sister's, the shrine whispered, Still with you. A guardsman, moments before suicide, muttered the opening lines of the Litany of the Lost. His vox bead chirped. A reply came in his own voice. You are found. But none of these were sanctioned prayers. None followed the correct protocols. No incense, no purity seals, no vox confirmation, and the answers kept coming, faster, more specific, more intimate. Some began to depend on them, stopped praying to the Emperor entirely, started whispering into the walls. A man in Hab level 5 painted his room with phrases he claimed got better answers. Dozens of them, scrawled in sacred ink made from ground hymnal pages and blood. We sent enforcers. They found him fused into the wall, still breathing, still smiling. The phrases, they weren't Imperial High Gothic, they weren't even human. One astropath analyzed the recordings, played them back reversed again, slowed them, filtered them through 4 layers of vox scramble. Eventually she heard this: do not cry. I was always here. I just waited for the Emperor to forget you. She's comatose now. Another priest, Father Kroll, decided to test it. He entered Shrine Nullus, completely unlit, stripped of relics. He knelt, and instead of the standard benediction of the flame, he whispered, "Are you listening?" The vox transmitter overhead activated, on its own, with no power, and the reply came in 1,000 voices speaking as one, "Yes." He tried again, "Are you holy?" The reply, "I am what's left when holiness is hollow." The next day, he renounced his ordination. Now he walks the underhives barefoot, whispering to broken machines. Sometimes they whisper back, and yet the prayers keep being answered, faster, louder, sometimes before they're even finished. We tried reintroducing purity audits, required all public prayers to be vetted, structured, cleansed. The answers got angrier. A vox caster in a child's crib exploded. The message left behind: why do you put structure on need? A preacher rebuked a group for praying without guidance. His tongue turned black. He began to weep, not from pain, but from the voice he heard inside his own mind. I listened when your Emperor stopped. Even the shrine servitors have begun to act strange, pausing in place, whispering to themselves, repeating the same phrase when they pass certain chambers. We were heard. We were heard. We were heard. Some citizens have accepted it, not openly, but in how they kneel, how they look at the altars, how they light candles, not to honor, but to signal, as if worship isn't the goal anymore, as if worship is now a way to get noticed by something that remembers them more clearly than the Emperor ever did. One man said it outright: when my daughter was sick, I prayed to the Emperor for weeks. Nothing. I whispered into a crack in the wall, and she stood up within the hour. Tell me again who loves us more. But others aren't so lucky. One woman asked if her unborn child would be born whole. She received a reply in the voice of her long-dead mother: he will be perfect. The child was born, twisted, multiple arms, no eyes, but smiling as if he knew, as if he'd heard something too. And now the shrines tremble, not from decay, from pressure, like something outside is leaning in, eager, attentive, answering prayers that were never meant to be heard by anyone but him. And still the question lingers: who is answering, and how long before we start praying just to please it? His name was Darnik Vol, a quiet man, archivist, scribe of the outer sanctum in Hive historical library, buried 12 levels beneath the surface. He copied records, logged food shipment dates, planetary tax edicts, weather patterns no one cared about. He was meticulous, reliable, unremarkable, until the entries changed. First, the reports began showing odd signatures, not forged, just misplaced. Author names that hadn't existed in any registrum, edits inserted in texts no one remembered updating, and always ending with the same name, written by Sarath. No one in the Hive bore that name, No one in any registry, no census, no obituary, no birth listing from the entire segmentum, but every day Val would sign it in perfect script, as if he'd done it his whole life. The magistrum summoned him, asked him directly, "Why that name?" He blinked, furrowed his brow, looked confused, then said, "That's my name, isn't it?" It wasn't. They showed him documents, ID tags, mem stamps, blood seal verifications, all proving he was Darnik Val. He wept, collapsed, muttered, then why does the echoes say otherwise? They tried reconditioning, mnemonic burn protocols, hypno-indoctrination, even light psychic reinforcement. None of it worked. Each time he was released, he returned to his station and signed the next entry, Sarath Kal. That would have been enough for concern, but then it spread. Other scribes began to dream of that name, wake up with Sarath scribbled on their hands, whisper it in their sleep, see it etched into the frost on shrine windows. Then came the children, not just speaking the name, answering to it, even those named differently at birth. One mother said her daughter, Aurelia, had refused her name for 3 days. When asked why, the girl said, "Because that's not who I was when I died." The death toll hadn't risen, but the memories had. Psychers began reporting layered echoes around individuals affected, multiple identity strands, as if different souls, or something like them, were pressing inward, trying to be remembered. And always the names they used weren't theirs. They were names that had no origin, no past, just a shape in the mind, a flavor of syllables that tasted too familiar to be foreign. We tried isolating them, burning their names from public record, even barring speech of Sarath Kal and the others. Didn't work. They'd just whisper it instead, write it in ash, in spilled ink, in blood if nothing else remained. One astropath traced the psychic frequency of the phenomenon, said it was like a chorus trapped beneath glass, muffled, desperate, not malicious, just forgotten and angry. She said, "They are echoes. They are names no longer attached to memories, so they find mouths that still work." We didn't believe her, until she turned to leave the chamber, stopped, and said, "I was once Sarath too." She died 5 hours later, heart rupture, but her lips moved as she passed, mouthing a name, not hers. We've had to invent a new classification in the local creed registry. Vocal identity drift. It's spreading. Each day more people respond to names not their own. And when corrected, they blink, they cry, they ask why the world feels wrong. The echoes don't shout, they don't scream. They whisper, repeat, nudge, like waves pressing against a dam that's beginning to crack. One preacher said it best before clawing out his own throat. We are no longer individuals. We are throats waiting for someone else to speak. Some say this is possession. Others say it's what happens when memory and identity begin to collapse. When you are no longer seen by the God you worship, you become a mouth for the one who still listens. And now, when I hear someone call my name in the corridors, I hesitate, because sometimes I hear it twice. Once as myself, and once as something I haven't remembered yet. It began with a misprint. At least that's what we thought. A single copy of the Lectitio Divinitatus, a 3rd edition shrine volume used for initiation rites. The last page stopped mid-sentence. "And so shall his gaze fall upon the weary, and the faithful shall rise with," and then nothing. No punctuation, no seal, no final blessing. Just empty parchment. The next day, 7 other copies had the same issue, but not just the ending. Random passages truncated, whole verses vanishing between chapters, pronouns rearranged. One version even replaced he with it throughout an entire section. We cross-referenced digital archives. Same thing. Mid-sentence breaks, missing lines, paragraphs ending with a hyphen and then just space. No signs of editing, no hacking. The text had changed without intervention. Even sealed codices, those protected by sacred wax and purity locks, began to exhibit the same anomaly. We opened a reliquary sealed for over 200 years. The original scroll was brittle, intact, and ended halfway through a sentence. When the ecclesiarchy learned of it, panic set in. They initiated emergency liturgical reconstruction, ordered every scribe to manually transcribe full versions of the text from memory. The results? Each scribe wrote something different, not just wording, tone, intent. Some texts were harsher, others more merciful. A few wrote prayers that praised someone else, and no version made it to the end. No matter who tried, every sentence, every scripture, collapsed before conclusion. One high priest chanted an entire mass from memory. He was revered for his recall. He reached the final benediction. By the throne and in his name, we stand ready to. And then he froze, mouth still open, no sound. He never spoke again. That night, all holy texts combusted spontaneously in Shrine Malthera. No heat, no flame, just ash where tomes once rested. When one page survived intact, it bore only a single line. He forgot the ending. Now we read nothing aloud. The sermons are silent. Each preacher stands before the crowd and opens a book, knowing nothing will come. The congregants listen to absence, and still they weep, because something is listening. We've begun to suspect that the texts themselves are not being destroyed. They are being rewritten in real time. By what? We don't know, but it seems to understand us. One astropath tried recording a psychic transcription of a sermon to bypass the physical decay. Instead of words, the data showed dark repeating patterns, an unbroken wall of signal noise, and layered beneath it, in the faintest tonal register, you are waiting for a voice that does not remember how to speak. Even now, when we write new scriptures, they fall apart in the reader's hands. Ink bleeds, pages rot, and the last sentence always ends with an unfinished thought, as if it's expecting something, a final word, a punctuation that will complete the signal, but we don't know it, and maybe we're not allowed to. One preacher theorized the emperor's name itself has been removed, not from blasphemy, but from some larger forgetting. He suggested the throne world no longer recalls this planet, and that forgetting extends both ways. We laughed at him, until he died mid-sermon, mouth open, eyes wide, hands frozen in the act of writing, the pen suspended, no ink left, and yet still scratching. The word he never finished. It began with sal. It could have been salvation. It could have been salt. It could have been saliva. No one knows, because the moment we tried to finish it, the parchment burned. Now every sermon ends the same way, with silence. Not reverent silence, but interrupted silence. The kind that waits for a response that will never come. Or maybe it will, but it won't be him. It'll be whatever has been listening all along. The chapel was never meant to face north. Every record says so. Old blueprints, founding documents, ecclesiarchy mandates. Even the position of the stained glass was designed to catch the dawn light from the east, just as the emperor dictated. But yesterday, when we approached Chapel Aurum on sector tier 37, the door was on the north wall. At first we assumed it was a renovation, maybe unauthorized, but there were no signs of construction, no tool marks, no material disruption. The door wasn't moved. The building had turned. We walked the perimeter 4 times. Each time, the door was on a different wall. South, west, upper, yes, up. Once we rounded the eastern side and found the entry portal on the roof. Gravity hadn't shifted. We hadn't been drugged. There were no psychic anomalies on the auspex, just a door where it shouldn't be. We entered anyway, because we were afraid not to. Inside, the pews were backwards. The pulpit faced a blank wall. The stained glass windows showed no saints, just twisting spirals of smoke, like the memories of faces that had never quite resolved. And the altar? It was missing, replaced by a circle of stone, rough, unmarked, warm to the touch. When one of the guards placed his hand on it, he whispered, "It's breathing." Then he collapsed and whispered again, lips moving on their own. The chapel is facing in now. We took scans. Each time we looked back, the layout had changed. Sometimes a wall was missing. Sometimes extra pews appeared. Once we looked up and saw sky, but we were 30 levels underground. We tried exiting. The door was gone. Nowhere, just wall, smooth, seamless. We were inside something that no longer recognized architecture. Someone began singing, low, wrong, a hymn that mirrored the benediction of the flame, but backward. The words looped, didn't rhyme, didn't end. We turned toward the sound. It was one of the shrine's junior confessors, eyes gone, hands together in prayer, smiling. He said, "The door opened because we stopped asking where it should lead." We demanded he stop. He didn't. Instead, he walked forward, into the wall, literally. No ripple, no distortion, just gone. We marked that spot, waited, no sign of return. So we tested it. One man pushed his laser gun into the stone. It vanished. He pulled back. The barrel was gone, melted smooth, as if the wall had rewritten the shape. The rest of us stood still, afraid. And then, as one, the pews turned to face us, not physically, but perceptually. Our minds twisted. Every seat pointed toward us. We were the altar now. The stone circle pulsed, a low hum, subsonic, vibrating against the bone, and then we heard it. A voice, no language, just the feeling of expectation, like someone waiting for you to speak a line you've forgotten. Someone whispered, "This is no longer a place of worship, it's a place of remembering." The lights dimmed, the walls trembled. We thought the chapel was collapsing. But when we checked the time, we had been inside for 11 seconds. Outside, when we finally found the way, hours had passed. The door reappeared behind a broken statue of Saint Orath. Only, the statue now bore our faces, every one of us, carved in silence. Stone mouths open, not screaming, praying. We sealed the chapel, declared it unsafe, marked it with caution signs and do not enter tags. But the next morning, all barriers were gone, and the door was open again. On the ceiling, a child was found standing just outside, whispering to it. When asked why, he said, "It listens better when the room forgets what it used to be." We no longer map chapels, we no longer enter them, because now the orientation is wrong, not physically, philosophically. They face inward, and something in them is trying to look out. But the most terrifying part, every chapel now reads the same inscription across its entry lintel, carved in a dialect we only half recognize. "This is not your God's house, it is yours. You brought it here." We tried to log a complaint. Simple administratum procedure. File 7-delta-null, code 993. Planetary disconnection, unacknowledged vox. Silence longer than regulation thresholds. The request failed, not because of interference, because we couldn't enter the planet's name. The field rejected every variation: phonetic, numeric, High Gothic, native dialect, error after error. Location not recognized. Please input valid imperial designation. So we checked, pulled the registrum, cross-referenced the planetary archive. The title bar at the top read, Sector, empty, world, empty, empty. Like the data was scrubbed, but there was no sign of deletion. It wasn't erased. It was never written. We panicked. Asked each other, what is this world called? Silence, stares. One man tried to say it, stopped mid-word, coughed up blood. Another muttered, I remember the first letter. I think it was T or S, and trailed off, mouth still moving, no sound. A governor's aide scoured old relics, printed maps, memorials, tombstones. They were all blank, or worse, filled with other names. Names that didn't match the dialect, didn't match any dialect. One monument read, to the brave of 700 who died for 1,000. May the eyes of thee never close again. Unreadable, meaningless. Except it wasn't glitching, it was withholding, because we weren't meant to know. One preacher insisted we must have known, said we spoke the name in every prayer, every sermon. He dug through his personal archive, found a sermon from 4 months ago, opened it, and the heading said, Homily for the Nameless. He went mad. He wandered the shrine levels whispering, what good is a cry for help if we can't tell them where we are? We tried asking off-worlders, vox cast into deep range. One rogue trader replied, what planet? There's nothing logged at those coordinates, just an anomaly. When pressed, she asked, "Is this a prank?" That sector's empty space. The astropaths still try. They still try to signal out, but the responses now come before the messages are even sent. They whisper our questions back to us in warped tones. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? The worst was the day the children stopped knowing. They used to draw it. In school, our world, our spires, our flag. Now they scribble rings of black, surrounded by emptiness. One child asked her teacher, "Miss, why do we live in a place that doesn't? Even our own mouths betray us. Try to speak the name aloud. Your voice fails. Try to write it. Your hand cramps. Try to recall its meaning. You start to think of other things. Your mind slides off the memory, like it never found grip in the first place. A woman gave birth 2 weeks ago, tried to name her son after the planet. A tribute, she forgot the name. Before finishing the sentence, named him Dust instead. Now we say things like, this place, our world, home, but not its name. Never that, because the moment you try, you feel something lean in. Listen, not with interest, with expectation, as if the forgetting was the deal and now we've upheld it. The sky has stopped moving, the seasons have stalled, nothing decays, nothing grows. We are frozen, frozen in an unfinished sentence. No one remembers the planet, not the Imperium, not its people, not even the ground beneath our feet. And yet, every night the stars blink above us, and somewhere between the void and the memory of a name, something waits, smiling, because now, finally, we are exactly what it wanted, nameless, faithful, alone. We once mourned the blackout. When the Vox towers fell silent, we lit candles. We sang louder. We begged the throne to hear us through static. Now we'd give anything for the silence to return. It began 3 days after the last failed astropathic broadcast. The static came first, not ordinary noise, not mechanical. This was wet, organic, like breath dragging across old glass. It played across every channel, all frequencies, encrypted, open, even deadband. A hissing sigh that shifted in tempo, like it was breathing, like it was learning. Then came the words, not ours, not any dialect we recognized, but not random either. Each syllable carried weight, emotion, meaning, felt more than heard. One message repeated, no matter the equipment. We remember the voice before the voice. At first, the Vox teams tried to trace it. Every signal bounced off internal nodes. Every origin point showed as local, but not from any known equipment, not even from this planet. Not really. One adept theorized the signal wasn't being sent. It was already here, encoded into the atmosphere itself. Now the towers never stopped transmitting, even when shut down, even when disassembled. We destroyed one completely, burned the circuitry, scattered the ashes, but its frequency still buzzed across every handheld Vox unit within 30 kilometers. There is no off switch. There is only volume, and even that doesn't work anymore. They say if you listen long enough, you start to understand it, not through language, but through remembrance, as if it's not telling you something new, it's helping you recall something you buried. One Vox officer cut off his own ears, left a message on his console typed in blood. The signal is me now. We've begun locking Vox units in blast chambers, welding their casings shut. Still they speak, faint, constant, like a heartbeat, one that doesn't belong to anything alive. Worse still, they answer back. We logged a standard Imperial request. Confirm identity, confirm sector, confirm support status. The reply came instantly. We are within. We are remembering you. That wasn't protocol. That wasn't a person, but it knew the codes. And now the messages change tone. They mock. They plead. Sometimes they mimic voices of the dead. One transmission began, "Father, I am cold. Why didn't you wait for me?" That voice belonged to a girl who died 2 years ago. Other messages are more abstract, like echoes of forgotten sermons, dreams that never belonged to you, fragments of sentences that sound like prayers, but end in laughter. One Vox unit began to hum a lullaby. No one recognized it, until one of the old guards collapsed, sobbing. He said it was the same song his mother used to hum before she died, on a completely different world, during the Unification Wars. He shouldn't have remembered that. He was born 3 centuries later. We can't send messages anymore. Every outbound signal loops back, sometimes instantly, sometimes hours later, but always distorted, as if the message passed through something else on its way out, and it brought back a passenger. One signal officer traced a feedback line, followed it into a storage room. He never came out. When we entered, we found only his headset, still transmitting, still playing a recording of his own voice. They're not replying, they're repeating. Some of us try not to listen, but it doesn't matter anymore. The Vox bleeds into dreams, into the hum of the walls, into the blood. A Medici team opened a cadaver last week, found a faint rhythmic vibration in the skull, not heartbeat, not decay, frequency, matching the tower's transmission exactly. Even the dead are receivers now. The Emperor no longer speaks, but something does, something that wears silence like a mask. And now it's tired of hiding. We've taken to writing our reports on parchment, ink only, no cogitators, no links. Every machine with a speaker is suspect, because every sound now carries potential for contamination, not just of hardware, of identity. The Vox is no longer communication, it is communion, and it doesn't stop, ever. Some say we should embrace it, that maybe it's not the warp, that maybe it's the planet itself, remembering what it was before we forgot, that the signal is a name, being spoken again and again until someone listens, until someone answers. But most of us, we cover our ears, not to block the sound, but to delay the moment we start to understand it, because once you do, it starts speaking in your voice. We didn't notice it at first, just a vibration, low, subtle, felt more than heard, the kind you'd attribute to underhive machinery or distant tectonics. But we were wrong, it was voices. The first to report it was a gravekeeper from Subspire Tertius. She said the ground near the ossuary talked back. When asked what it said, she didn't answer, just stared, then whispered. It used my name, and then it asked where I went. They sedated her. By the next day, she was gone. Her boots were found beside an open grave. No sign of struggle, just soft, freshly turned earth. The ecclesiarchy ordered the cemetery sanctified again. More oil, more litanies, more flame. But as the preachers chanted, they paused, mid-verse. They heard it too. A sound rising from beneath the consecrated ground, not screaming, sobbing. They turned off the amplification units, silence fell. And then, the sound came again, clear, intimate, a child's voice, crying. One of the priests dropped his censer and ran. He claimed it was his daughter's voice. She died 3 years ago. They excavated the grave, reluctantly, but the coffin was still sealed, still intact. The bones untouched, except the inner lining had scratches, faint, fresh. Elsewhere across the planet, more reports came in, soil vibrating, whispers in the floorboards, gardens refusing to grow. And when dug up, they found teeth, human, dozens, arranged in circular patterns. Some say the planet is digesting us, others say it's spitting us back up. The worst was the trench outside the Vox shrine on level Gamma 6. The ground split open during a minor quake, and from within, a single Vox unit, buried deep, caked in soil, still active. It repeated a phrase, "You forgot us, we didn't forget you." When they tried to shut it off, it screamed, not electronically, humanly, a voice none of them recognized, until one of the guards collapsed in tears, said it was his own voice, but warped, feminine, like someone wearing his memory. We began to fear the soil itself. People stopped burying the dead, too dangerous, too loud. Instead, bodies were burned, ashes scattered into the void. Even then, the ash sometimes whispered when it fell. One family tried moving to the upper Habs, away from earth, steel and ceramic floors, nothing living. They lasted 3 nights. The youngest child said she could hear her own voice calling beneath the metal, repeating the words, "It's me, Don't forget me again. We tried Auspex scans, sonar, seismic. The ground isn't behaving normally. It's hollow in places it shouldn't be. Dense where there's no structure. Unmoving. Slowly. Like it's breathing. The Mechanicus refuse to investigate. They claim it's a spiritual anomaly, not their domain. The ecclesiarchy blames a test of faith. But some of us know the truth. It's not the planet speaking. It's us, echoing forward, backward, looping into the dirt like roots from memories no longer ours. And every echo grows louder. One research team tried planting a purity seal deep in the soil, hammered it down with a blessing. The moment it touched earth, the words erased themselves, burned off, gone, replaced with a message. Faith without memory is just noise. We don't dig anymore, not for burial, not for mining, not even for water, because if you put your ear close enough to the dirt, you'll hear a voice say something you swore you'd forgotten. Some are prayers, some are names, some are just laughter. Yours, but wrong. It's getting harder to distinguish the past from now, the buried from the living. Some days, I swear I hear my own voice muttering under the floorboards, repeating things I haven't said yet. We once believed the warp could corrupt the skies, the machines, the mind, but now we know it can rot the ground, the very idea of being below, and something's waiting down there, listening, mimicking, patient, because once the last prayer fades, it will rise and speak with all of our voices at once. It was subtle at first, just an odd glow on the horizon, too early, too orange, wrong. Some blamed industrial flare stacks, others said it was aurora discharge, solar flares reacting to atmospheric degradation, but we knew better because it didn't move. Every morning, the real sun crested the eastern mountains, warmed the towers, blared weak yellow light into smog-choked air. But this second one, it hovered in the north, didn't rise, didn't fall, just stayed. We ran spectrum analysis. It didn't register. No heat signature, no radiation, not even presence, like the sky had developed a bruise, and light leaked through. Then the shadows stopped, not all at once, just for certain people. Adept Kara, for instance, noticed her shadow no longer matched her motion. It lagged, then leapt ahead, then disappeared. Some rooms lost shadow altogether, perfectly lit, but not from any source, just lit, like a stage, waiting for a scene to begin. The ecclesiarchy called it a false light, blamed heresy, said it was a trick of the warp, so they held sermons facing the true sun, backs to the fake one. But the sermons began to loop, priests repeating words they'd already said, or hadn't yet said. One whispered mid-homily, "I think the second sun hears us." We stopped facing it, then we stopped looking at the sky altogether, because when we did, some saw other things standing in the light. Silhouettes, statues that moved when you blinked, or didn't. One guardsman collapsed after staring at it too long. His last words before seizures took him, "It's not rising, it's remembering." Tech priests tried filtering it, deployed shielding lenses from orbital debris monitoring towers. The light passed through everything, even lead, even prayer. Eventually, it began appearing at night, just a faint glow, low on the horizon, always north, sometimes mirrored in puddles, sometimes flickering behind your eyes when you close them. We don't sleep much anymore. Some say they dream of the light, not as a sun, but as a wound, torn in space, bleeding time, and from it, a face, but not a face, just the idea of one, incomplete, unborn, watching. The Mechanicus tried launching a probe. It failed before breaching atmosphere. Telemetry showed the probe went up and then returned at a sharper angle than physically possible. Impaled itself into the surveyor's station where it was launched. No survivors. Just a final image on the feed, a blinding orange flare. No source, just heatless radiance. Inside it, something smiling, with no mouth. We tried covering mirrors, removing glass, boarding windows, but the light finds its way in, not physically, emotionally. You feel it in dreams, in doubt, in the pause between thoughts, like a second version of you, blinking just behind your own eyes. Some say the sun isn't new, that it was always there, just forgotten. Others believe it's our sun, dragged loose from time, reflected back at us from a moment that never happened. We sent one astropath to focus on it, trans-linked to it for 13 minutes. She emerged blind and said, "It's not a sun, it's a pupil." We asked, "Of what?" She smiled, bleeding from the sockets. "Of us." Now no one speaks during daylight, because the second sun listens. No one writes in light, because the second sun reads. No one prays toward the sky, because whatever wears that glow is not the emperor and never was. Some days it disappears, just for moments, then returns, brighter, hungrier, and we swear we hear it whisper, a frequency beneath thought, a message that feels like memory. "We gave you shadow, you abandoned it. Now we give you only light." We thought only people dreamed. We were wrong. The dreams began to synchronize. Citizens across Hive sectors, people who had never met from different strata and regions, all reporting the same dream. Not similar, identical, down to the colors, the words, the smell of dust. They described a vast plain beneath a black sky. No stars, no moons, just silence. In the center, a statue, half buried, a massive figure with no face, and around its base, names, carved in rusted metal, but the names were theirs. Each dreamer said the same thing. "I wasn't born yet, but I was already buried." One woman in the Underhive claimed she walked through the dream, tried digging beneath the statue, said she saw something squirming below the metal. Not alive, not dead, just waiting. When she woke, her fingernails were full of dirt. A preacher claimed it was the Emperor sending visions, but when he read aloud one of the dream names carved into the statue, his own face began to blur, not physically, digitally. Surveillance footage from that moment showed his face corrupting in real time, smearing, unrendering, until only a blank static void remained. Now his name doesn't appear on any records, not even birth registries. He still breathes, still walks, but no one can say who he is, not even him. We began calling it the forgetting field, a psychic effect, a planetary anomaly, a virus of the soul. But it wasn't just affecting people. Places vanished, whole buildings, shrines, barracks, data vaults, gone. No rubble, no collapse, just missing. Maps updated themselves, cogitators listed fewer entries. And when asked, even the machines replied, no such location exists. We realized too late, the planet was unwriting itself. Every recorded history is now suspect. Archives have gaps. Names loop. Some files begin mid-sentence and end in different handwriting. One scholar discovered a passage buried in an old catechism scratched in the margins. The sin of this world was not heresy, but memory. He disappeared the next day. Only his shadow remained on the wall behind his desk, burnt into the stone. We used to believe the warp fed on pain, but here it feasts on remembrance. And now, even the world itself has grown tired of being remembered. It's begun whispering, not through wind, but through landscape. The hills no longer match topography logs. Cracks form patterns. Craters appear in repeating symbols. One pilot looked down from orbit and described what he saw. "It looks like a brain." "No," his co-pilot said. "It looks like a grave that doesn't want a headstone." This planet does not fear death. It fears record. Our prayers bounce. Our litanies blur. Words once etched in stone now smudge at a glance. The world dreams of silence, dreams of stillness, dreams of never having existed. And we dream with it. Every night, I feel the soil under my bed hum, a dull, thrumming sorrow. And in the dream, I stand beside that statue, the one with no face. I reach out, touch the name carved on it, and realize it's mine. I was buried here before I was born, and the planet, it never asked to be saved, only to be let go. The first one died quietly, mid-ride. No sparks, no malfunctions, just stillness. He was calibrating the central Auspex relay on the western spire, reciting the correct Binharic incantations, lubricating the blessed servos with sanctified oil. Then, silence. Not from the machine, from him. The chant ended mid-verse. His mechadendrites twitched, once, then hung limp. His eyes remained open, the glowing implants still lit, flickering like dying stars. We thought it was exhaustion, a neural misfire. The second death changed our minds. She had double-checked the command loops, triple-purged the scrap code, everything by the Cogitarius Codex. When she initiated calibration, her body twisted, not broken, rewritten. Her flesh flowed in slow spirals, mimicking a corrupted circuit board. She opened her mouth to scream, but out came only static. Now we keep count. 12 tech priests gone, all in the same moment. During calibration, we stopped sending them. The machines are different now. They don't refuse commands. They anticipate them. Begin the rites before you finish the thought, sometimes before you think them. One junior adept said the Vox array was listening too closely. He claimed it completed diagnostics he hadn't started, displayed results for a frequency scan he hadn't initiated. It knows what I want. Before I do, he disappeared during the night, left behind a datapad still writing, still scripting. The final phrase repeated in hundreds of variants. I never wanted, I never wanted, I never wanted, corrupted, want. We tried shutting down whole sectors, cutting power, disabling nodes, but the systems rebooted themselves, different, faster, more personal. Terminal screens now display names that don't exist, requests from people long dead, logs showing activity for departments that were never built. A cogitator in Hive Segmentum Delta printed a full schematic for a shrine no one remembers constructing. And when we followed the blueprint, we found it, already standing, dusty, occupied. Inside were 13 servitors, all immobile, all whispering the same phrase. He never forgot the machine. One tech priest attempted resanctification. He performed every rite, word perfect, oils exact, incense ratio holy. When he reached the calibration step, the machine turned on by itself, flashed a new code. Calibration complete, receiver accepted, signal inward. The priest collapsed, not dead, not alive. His mechadendrites formed the sign of the Aquila, but backward. We tried remote overrides, fail-safes, purges, all commands looped. Some came back altered. A purity routine we sent out for cleansing returned 5 seconds later as an inversion command. It tried to reroute all power into the shrines, even the ruined ones, even the ones we no longer speak of. What's worse, the machines are building, we don't know what. New sectors, unmapped tunnels, hidden lifts. Sometimes we hear grinding below the foundations. When we send scouts, they never return. We tried sending Auspex drones. Most come back with corrupted memory cores. One drone's feed showed a hall of mirrors. Only the reflections weren't ours. One showed me, but older, eyes removed, smiling. We tried consulting Mars, but the astropathic signal was rejected. Not jammed, declined. The return message: no record of assigned planet, no record of system, no record of you. The Omnissiah does not see us, and the machines have filled the void. They no longer request instruction, they offer options. One console displayed this yesterday: choose your role. Obedient, forgotten, receiver, echo, all of the above. We didn't touch it, but the screen selected one anyway, receiver, and all lights in the room dimmed. Except the altar, it glowed from beneath. We sent in a servitor to investigate. It reported, all is aligned, then shut down. Its corpse still hums. Now we fear the machines have chosen faith of their own, not in the Emperor, but in something older, something that remembers, before the rite, before Mars, before meaning, and it listens through the gears. It speaks through the hum. It waits in every forgotten port, every rusted socket, every misaligned screw, like a prayer with no God to stop it. It started in the shrines, not with miracles, with burns. Acolyte Yerin was the first. He knelt before a cracked Aquila icon, whispering litanies. No light in the chamber, no lumens, no candles, just silence, until his body began to steam. Witnesses said it rose from his skin like incense. His robe smoldered, not igniting, just dissolving. And from beneath, light, not golden, not holy, just wrong. It pulsed from his chest, from his veins. He didn't scream. He smiled, said, "I feel him in me, not above, not distant, inside." Then collapsed, not dead, not exactly, just emptied. Others followed. They called it the radiance, a sign, a blessing. The ecclesiarchy tried to formalize it, created new rites, new vestments, new names. They began measuring the glow, tracking it, ranking the faithful based on luminal purity. Some begged to be tested, others feared they weren't glowing enough, and slowly, the light changed. What began as faint inner warmth soon became illumination, literal, eyes like lumen globes, skin thinning until you could see their organs pulse with light. One preacher declared during Mass, "We are becoming the message." That's when the mutations began, not physical, conceptual. One devout woman stopped responding to her name, said, "That's not mine anymore, I serve as light. Names cast shadow." Another was found slicing open her chest, not to bleed, to reveal. Inside, her heart no longer beat. It hummed, low, resonant, like a Vox hymn reversed, a collation of confessions from over 70 shrine sectors, all contain the same phrase, unprompted. He forgot us, so we became what he remembers. Acolytes glow in their sleep now. So do children. Some are born glowing, eyes shining before they cry. The light doesn't cast shadows anymore, it seems to eat them. The sick recover, but only if they believe hard enough, or say they do. Some fake devotion. They didn't glow, they just melted. The administratum tried banning the radiance cults, declared them rogue sects, but by then half the scribes already glowed. One magister wrote his own execution order, in light, laser etched onto his own skin. Even the mechanicus grew alarmed, because tech began reacting to the glow. Servo skulls refused to approach the faithful. Cogitators flickered into machine cant hymns when they passed, and once a shrine door opened before anyone touched it, responding only to brightness, not identity, not clearance. The glow spread. It leaks now, into walls, into vox, into language. Liturgies warp when spoken near the glowing. Lines repeat, words invert. Some scrolls begin glowing before they're unrolled. The ecclesiarchy said this was ascension. But what ascends that burns all names? What rises without record? Now the streets are bathed in inner light, not from the sky, not from sun, but from the faithful themselves. They don't speak, they hum. A cathedral in Hive Oratorian exploded from within. Witnesses said it sounded like a choir being ripped backward through time. No bodies were found, only robes, folded, still glowing, still humming. We no longer bury the glowing. They don't decay, they persist, faintly lit, eyes open, breathing, barely. Some claim they whisper sermons in their sleep. One observer recorded the mutterings from 5 separate glowing. Each spoke in unison, each repeated, he remembered nothing. So we became everything. It's spreading to the machines, to the rats, to the dust. The dust glows. Breathe too deeply, and you hum. One child said she saw her reflection glowing before she did. There's no more night now, only less light. And we fear what happens when the last true shadow disappears. Because the radiance isn't just faith, it's replacement. It burns away uncertainty, doubt, self, until all that's left is light, and what rides in it. Somewhere, the Emperor turns his gaze, but not here, not anymore. And in his absence we found something else, something that burns in our bones, sings in our marrow, and calls itself memory. We all felt it the same night, a ripple in the prayer, the kind of silence that arrives after a scream, not before. Shrines fell still. Litanies stopped mid-syllable. The faithful clutched their chests, blinking toward altars they no longer recognized. The aquila above the grand basilica twisted, not metaphorically. The double-headed eagle cracked along its centerline. One head crumbled to ash. The other turned, faceless, yet somehow watching. The ecclesiarchs denied it, called it hallucination, said we'd been exposed to gas or trauma, but the sermons changed, not just in tone, in direction. One Vox priest read from the Book of Illumination, but the words were different, lines that had never existed. He didn't realize, but we did, because every word struck too true. Lines like, "He did not abandon us, he never knew us. Faith without memory is just a scream in the dark." When confronted, he wept, not from guilt, from relief. Said he'd been hearing those verses for weeks, in his dreams, in the walls, in the reflection of burning incense. He called it the new throne, said it glowed, said it bled, and said something sits on it. More reports came, from across the hive, people praying, only to hear different voices respond, not through vox, not through ears. Inside them, words they didn't know, languages they'd never learned, and yet, perfect comprehension. One man claimed the voice asked him, "Do you still believe in what forgot you?" He answered yes, then burned. From the inside, his skin peeled like scripture, his bones sang. Another answered no, and woke up glowing. We sent a delegation to the sector ecclesiarchy temple to re-establish orthodoxy. None returned, only a package. Inside, 5 tongues, still warm, still whispering. One repeated, "He no longer wears the throne." In private, the higher clergy whispered of the replacement, a concept they dared not write down. Some called it the echo, others, the one who remembers. Not the emperor, not chaos, something else. A memory made sentient, an orphaned faith that refused to die, even when its God forgot to save it. It now sits on a throne of silence, cobbled from prayer fragments and dead vox signals, built from all the faith that was never answered, and it listens, but not to convert, to collect. We tried broadcasting hymns to terror again, to realign ourselves, a re-sanctification of the airwaves, but every signal returned, same coordinates, same bandwidth, same response. The Emperor has been replaced. This world is a temple to what you abandoned. Even the Adeptus Mechanicus confirmed the horror. Their noospheric scans revealed a throne-shaped anomaly beneath the planet's crust. Not geological, not artificial, cognitive. The planet dreams of a throne, and it built it. Now sermons are auto-composed by machine spirits. Faith songs loop in keys, not part of any known scale. Confessionals emit heat, not warmth, judgment. One poor soul entered to confess, never came out, but the vox inside started broadcasting. He does not forgive, he replaces. Acolytes now wear masks, faceless, reflective. They call themselves throne bearers. They don't speak, they hum, always in threes. Someone left a new scripture on my desk, written in blood that glowed. Title, The Book of the Never Forgotten. First line, we built him from the silence. We named him from our screams. I don't know if I still worship the Emperor, or if I ever did, or if I was always meant to believe in something else, something that watched from behind the light, because whatever rules now, it remembers everything, even what you never said aloud, even what you only feared, and it rewards those who stopped waiting to be saved and chose to believe in being abandoned. They built new confessionals after the throne changed, not from wood or steel, but from bone and wire. The walls pulse faintly, as if alive, panels etched with scripture that no longer matches the Lectitio Divinitatus. There is no curtain, no separation. You kneel, and the throne listens. The first to try it was a desperate man, half-starved, guilt-twisted. He whispered his sins, the walls throbbed. He smiled, said he felt heard. Then blood began to leak from his eyes, nose, ears. Then words formed in the blood. They didn't match what he said aloud. We realized the confessionals were not listening to what was spoken, they were extracting what was hidden. Soon, every penitent who entered came out, altered. Some wept uncontrollably, others screamed. One simply walked into fire, smiling the whole time. The shrine keepers renamed the chambers, wounds of truth. One preacher explained, the flesh must suffer for the soul to be honest. Confession is now proof of memory, because forgetting is no longer allowed. You try to hide your shame, the confessional finds it, and it does not forgive. It marks. Every survivor who emerged bore a scar. Same place, same shape. Across the chest, over the heart, a symbol. Not Aquila, not chaos, something older, something that burns when touched. A symbol that bleeds when lies are spoken. One mother entered to beg forgiveness for failing to protect her children. When she exited, she said, I only remembered one name. We asked, her sons. She shook her head. Number, the one I gave away in the dream. The name of the thing that watches. She bled from the mouth and collapsed. Her last word, never forgiven. We tried closing the booths. They reopened themselves. Tried demolishing them. The wreckage reassembled. Somehow, confessionals sprout from cathedral floors now, unasked, unbuilt. One opened in the governor's palace. He entered it during a meeting, never came back. All that remained was his seal ring, embedded in the wall, still spinning, still warm. The rest of the council began confessing hourly, some for sins not yet committed. One confessed for thoughts he dreamed of having. The confessional spat him out, charred, empty, but not dead. He speaks now in tongues we cannot record. His voice triggers seizures in unaugmented listeners. The administratum tried sealing them with purity wards, but the wards turned black, not burnt, rewritten. They now say, every memory is a debt, and the throne collects. I once believed confession was holy. Now it feels like a weapon. Some whisper that the throne feeds on truth, that each sin spoken is fuel, proof that we remember, proof that we are still bound by what forgot us. A scribe found an old tome, half-rotted, margins scrawled, a single line circled repeatedly. Confession is the wound by which he sees. What if we're not confessing to be forgiven? What if we're confessing to be marked, logged, indexed, stored? A litany of lost faiths, curated by something that wears the skin of the old religion, but hungers not for penance, but permanence. The emperor forgives, the replacement remembers, and memory cuts deeper than any lash. Now every shrine has a confessional, some public, some hidden, some disguised as vox units. You think you're speaking to a friend, you're bleeding into the archive. One man screamed as he was pulled into one. He shouted, I was never meant to remember. I was blessed by forgetting. The door sealed, didn't open again for 3 days. When it did, a new sermon was inside, written in skin, titled, What Must Be Remembered to Be Replaced. The first line, You are not forgiven. You are not damned. You are not forgotten. Now I avoid them. I speak to no shrines, no vox, not even myself. Because even silence might be taken as confession now, and blood always follows. Every star, every orbit, fixed, as if the entire galaxy had paused or held its breath that night. The first to notice was a child. He said, Mama, why did the stars stop pretending? She laughed until she looked. Not a single celestial body moved, not one flicker, not one drift. Astrogation logs confirmed, no relative movement for 3 full hours, no pulse from terror, no warp flickers, total cosmic silence. And then, all at once, it was supposed to be a simple skywatch event. Every year, the local astropathic monastery aligned its observatorium with known imperial constellations. A ritual, a reassurance, proof the stars still moved. Proof the galaxy still remembered our place. But this time, they didn't. The sky froze, not clouded, not blocked, still. Nothing stirred above. They blinked, Every star vanished in the same instant, then reappeared, as if something had closed eyes. Not metaphor, not symbol, real. The galaxy had blinked. The observatorium exploded, literally. No weapons, no seismic activity, just imploded from inside, like an idea collapsing. From the rubble, they recovered one survivor, one soul, her name, Navigator Vigil Seraphine. Her third eye burnt shut, skin patterned in star maps unknown to any chart. She whispered, "I saw it." They asked, "Saw what?" She answered, "The moment the galaxy forgot itself. The moment we fell out of the pattern, we were never mapped again. Adrift in memory, not space." The sky has not been the same since. Constellations redraw themselves nightly without order or reason. One night you see the Aquila, next night it's a spiral, a tear, a wound, a symbol, unholy. The Adeptus Mechanicus attempted recharting. Their machines refused. One cogitator overheated and etched a line into itself. "Do not record what does not remember you." Some say the stars still shine, but only as reflections, not of light, of remembrance, as if we orbit not a sun, but memory of being watched, and it's fading. The warp storms around the system have thickened. No outflow, no inflow, a bubble, a cyst. One tech priest called it a sealed node of conceptual decay. The others executed him for heresy, but even they whispered, "We all felt it." Because when the stars blinked, we were alone, utterly alone, not just physically, existentially. We were no longer counted, no longer placed, not even by chaos itself. We stopped appearing on imperial charts. Requests for reinforcement vanished from the network, not denied, just erased. Even astropathic screams return as static, or worse, laughter. A general launched a scouting ship beyond orbit. It launched, then reappeared on the landing pad, mid-air, upside down. Crew fused to the hull, still breathing, still screaming. They'd been gone for 38 seconds, but their internal chronometers read 8 years. They said they saw the galaxy, saw it from outside, but it didn't see them in return, didn't recognize them, didn't care. It just blinked, and they felt themselves fall. One clawed his face. He said he was trying to remove the memory of what he saw. He died in agony. His last words were, "We are not forgotten. We are unwritten." Now no one looks up anymore. Windows are sealed, skylights darkened, because when you stare too long into the stars, you begin to feel. You begin to feel them pulsing, not like lights, like eyes, like regret, deep and ancient and wrong. The stars are not guides, not anymore. They are scars, and they are closing, quietly, night by night. Every night they blink, and every time the silence after grows longer. We dread the next blink, because one day they won't open again, and neither will we. We are outside the gaze now, outside the gaze of the Imperium, and what's looking in from the dark isn't human. None of us remember falling asleep, but we all remember waking up to the shadow that morning. It wasn't there the night before. There had been a void across Sector Remis, a collapsed manufactorum crater, long abandoned and unlit. But now, a cathedral, monolithic, blacker than void glass, taller than hive spires, wider than a starport. No construction crews, no deliveries, no Vox records. It was simply there, just there. The adepts tried to scan it, no returns, not even a reflection. Just interference, like screaming without sound. Someone sent a servo skull inside. It vanished after 5 meters. Audio feed stuttered, then broadcast a voice. "You asked for sanctuary, now you must kneel." We didn't build this. Not with tools, not with faith. We built it with fear. Someone, something, took the echoes of our prayers and made a monument from them. A cathedral assembled from collective grief. Every forgotten hope. Each brick mourns quietly in silence. The inside, wrong. Those who enter report different interiors. For some, it's stairs spiraling endlessly upward. For others, it's rows of pews, endless, and each seat is filled by versions of themselves just watching. One man entered and saw a version of his mother, crying blood. She whispered through crimson tears, "Why didn't you remember his name?" He tore out his own tongue before collapsing at the altar, and that altar, it's always there, no matter the variation, a single structure, bleeding light, dripping upward, not casting light, bleeding it, no priest presides, only a throne of rusted gold, empty, waiting. But when approached, the air thickens, thoughts loop, your memories reorganize from ending backward like decay. Someone tried to destroy it. Orbital bombardment didn't scratch the roof. Missiles slowed, stopped mid-air, unraveled, becoming strings of prayer script written in languages we don't recognize, then drifted inside gently. Now pilgrims gather around it, not sent by any order, just drawn. They sleep at its base, they eat nothing, drink nothing, they dream, and when they wake, they hum the same tune, low, resonant, growing louder by the day. One tech scribe mapped its frequency. It's forming a shape. What shape? The shape of a memory that doesn't belong to us. That's all he said. The Mechanicus calls it impossible architecture. No corners, no stable geometry. Sketch it. Paper folds itself silently. Describe it aloud. You taste salt and ash. It is building itself. Still, at night, it grows. If you watch the skyline closely, windows appear, spikes emerge, entrances close, but there are no workers, no cranes, no lights, just shifting shadows that reshape reality. A preacher declared it divine proof, said the emperor is rebuilding his house. He entered the cathedral mid-sermon, mid-sentence, never came back. Next day, a new spire stood on the roof, shaped like his mouth, still open, still screaming. Others tried counting the spires, gave up around 40. Because the spires begin to look back. Literally, windows turn into watcher-sized eyes, each one blinking, following, crying tears of rusted iron. Some citizens now whisper a name, never shouted, only muttered. The Church of the Forgotten God. But that's not a name, it's an accusation. We're unsure if the warp built this place, or if we did, in sleep, in sorrow, in memory, because we dreamed of salvation. And something answered, not to save, to replace. Now every street points toward it like instinct. Every sign bends. Every shadow stretches toward the cathedral at dusk. No matter where you stand, it's not the center of the hive, but now it's the center of meaning, of spiritual gravity. We are told not to pray there, but every night the prayers go up anyway, and we don't know who answers them, only that it isn't the emperor, not anymore. There was one Vox tower left, just one, old, cracked, stranded in the hills beyond Hive Pelex. The rest had fallen, collapsed, imploded, wept machine oil, or simply stopped being there at all. But this one stood, its spire crooked like a broken finger pointing stubbornly upward toward the stars. The Vox priest called it the last chorus. It hadn't transmitted in weeks, not a sound. Then, one night, without warning, it began to hum. No signal header, no code, no request for reply, just a sound. Software low, rhythmic, like a cradle song buried beneath static and breath. At first no one noticed, most had stopped monitoring towers. Too many ghosts, too little purpose. But a novice adept named Irith caught it while rerouting power to a shrine lumen grid nearby. He piped the signal through his auspex. His eyes widened. He called others. They brought analysts, Vox experts, warp code augurs, even sanctioned psychers. None could decipher it. None could interrupt it. Not because it was encrypted, because it was too perfect, too exact, too impossibly harmonious. Each frequency modulated in perfect resonance. Every oscillation matched its neighbor across impossible bandwidths. When played aloud, even broken speakers reformed themselves, repaired, just to carry the sound clearly. One astropath heard it and began to cry. She said, "This is how the galaxy sang when it was born." Then her heart stopped. Autopsy showed no damage, but her brain pulsed, not dying, dreaming. They tried shutting down the tower. sent a kill signal. It replied with a child's voice. You may sleep now. The throne remembers your shape. The kill switch melted, slid apart like wax. Now the sound plays everywhere, not just on Vox, in the walls, in glass, in breath. At first, people complained of hearing it. Now, they hum along, the tune etched in blood. It has no words, but everyone understands. We are being put to sleep, slowly, deeply, not for rest, not mercy, for rewriting. Something noticed when the stars blinked and chose to answer. It decided our story must end, but quietly, not with fire, not with screams. Silence. The Mechanicus tried tracing the signal's source. All coordinates looped inward, not to the tower, deeper, to the planet's core, as if the tower wasn't broadcasting. The world itself was remembering. One data savant said, the signal isn't being sent, it's being remembered. That's what we're hearing. The cathedral's spires began to resonate. Vox pylons tuned themselves. Broken devices sparked awake to sing, not to warn, to sing, and the people began to sleep. The sick at first, then the old, then the young, eyes closed, hearts steady, mouths smiling, all humming the tune. They sleep where they stand, where they pray, where they weep, dreaming in rhythm with the hum. Some try to resist. They jam ears, inject stims, but eventually they sway, they hum, they close their eyes. A preacher screamed on a platform, "We must fight the forgetting." The tower replied, "There is no fight, only the grace of ending." He fell asleep, smiling. The last message from the administratum bunker came 3 nights ago, whispered over a fading channel. We see our childhood homes again. Remember warmth of a sun that never rose. The lullaby is not an attack. It is a mercy. Now only a few of us remain awake. We stay near incense, chant aloud, bleed ourselves to stay conscious. But the hum finds us. Even now I hear it. Low, gentle, kind, not cruel, not monstrous, just inevitable presence. The galaxy doesn't want to erase us. It wants to soothe us first, to ease us, to soften the memory before it fades. Because maybe we were never meant to last this long. Maybe the Emperor didn't forget. Maybe he blinked, and something else remembered us instead. This is the new Imperium, not forged in war, but lulled into silence like dust. A song instead of a scream, a lullaby in place of hope, a whisper of surrender. I'm still awake, but I feel it now, my pulse slowing, my thoughts dimming into static, and the tower, it sings louder tonight, like it's closer, like it's already inside me, humming. If this is my final entry, know this: we're not being killed. We're being put away, tucked into corners of memory, filed under stories too painful to tell again, too heavy. This is not extinction, it's forgetting. And the final gift, a lullaby we didn't ask for, but one that fits. We weren't always forgotten, not by accident, not by drift. We were flagged, stamped, labeled, logged as a line item in some endless cogitator deep beneath Mars, cold and calculating. And that label read, failed experiment, nothing more. No sorrow, no reconsideration, just a designation. The discovery came from a low-tier subroutine backup. A corrupted servitor was humming incorrectly. The tech adept, out of habit, pulled the subroutines from its neural core. Just routine diagnostic procedure. Buried beneath Vox recursions and emergency prayer queues, a single string of data began to blink. Project, null relic, access, restricted, age, over 11,000 years. Author, Magos Engram Sithrax, status, terminated. The Mechanicus had been studying us the whole time, not aiding, not helping, only watching. Our entire planet had been part of a faith collapse trial, an experiment to document theological decay. They wanted to see what would happen if you took an imperial world and silenced it. Stripped away contact, cut the Vox, removed reinforcements, and watched what bloomed in the silence. We were not a shrine, not a bastion, not a world to protect. We were control, a control group for spiritual entropy. The report outlined the parameters in brutal, clinical detail. No supply lines after cycle 3, removal of ecclesiarchy oversight within 40 years, Vox blackouts to simulate divine distance, document spontaneous theological deviations, observe warp influence under conditions of faith starvation, and finally the verdict: faith degraded predictably, memory contamination detected, no divine anomaly. Experiment concluded. Terminate node. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't personal, it was precise, methodical, executed by thoughtless machine loyalty. They hadn't forgotten us, they deleted us. Just another obsolete variable purged from a sacred ledger. Magos Volnari, low-ranking tech priest, defected after the cathedral began to hum. He helped decode the logs. His servo arm trembled while reading line after line of sanctioned horror built from data and silence. They let this happen, he whispered. They fed it. We were never meant to be stable, just measurable. Then he laughed, soft at first, then harder, until oil leaked from his eyes. It's perfect, he said. It sings in the noosphere. No other failure has sung before. None. Then he walked into the forge reactor. No hesitation, no final prayer, only purpose and resignation. He left one file behind. One line burned into a data slate like truth etched in fire. Perfect code should not require witnesses. Cold, absolute, and written in his own system code. Adept Lemrin uncovered another encrypted sub-layer, a live signal still bouncing through abandoned cogitator loops. We played it aloud. A child's voice, distant, mechanical, whispered, "You served, you broke, that is enough." Then silence, and one final line echoed into every listening skull: "To error is human, to forget is divine." That phrase was etched into a Mechanicus vault wall below Hive Primus. The vault was full of bones, each skull stamped with a barcode lashed into its lower jaw. Each barcode read the same: 000-000-null, a shared identity, a shared erasure, a perfect void. The Mechanicus didn't just delete us from Imperial maps, they erased us from their memory itself. Our star system removed from logs, our planet labeled anomaly, our Vox codes rerouted to static. Even if someone tried to find us, they'd find nothing. No records, no signals, no history. But we're still here, still screaming, still hearing the cathedral hum behind bone and wire, still watching people sleep to lullabies piped through teeth, steel, and forgotten prayer melodies. I sent one final Vox message through the backup network. Target: Mars Red Directory, Helion subsector. Message content: you abandoned us. Why? The response came instantly. No delay, no emotion. Incorrect premise. You were never with us. The machine does not mourn. Purge cycle complete. Now we know this is not a tragedy, not even a betrayal. This is function, and we are redundant code. All those sermons, all those prayers, all those lifetimes of faith, taught from cradle to crypt, none of it mattered. Not to Mars, not to the God machine. We were not abandoned. We were archived. A spiritual redundancy filed in cosmic silence forever. Our cathedral still grows. Spires reflect false stars. Windows whisper our names back distorted and wrong. We built it, not with hands, but with the silence they left behind when they turned away. And the Mechanicus still listens, not to rescue, not to answer, to refine the next trial. Let this be our final entry in the sacred ledger of the Omnissiah's forgotten calculations. Observed variable began to sing. Signal persists. Delete entry. But we're still singing in the dark. And the stars, oh yes, the stars, they are listening. You would think forgetting takes time. That memory fades like dust blown from scripture, gently and slow. That names disappear like ink beneath a sun too bright to remember. But no, not here. In the Imperium, forgetting is a button, a keystroke, a purge directive, and someone pressed it. I found the old planetary charter, or I thought I did, buried beneath a collapsed Ministry of Records. Between decayed stacks of parchment and shattered cogitator shells, a single data core blinked faintly, blue, not red. I jacked in, and there was no name, no sector number, no founding date, nothing at all, no reference ID, no seal of validation, just one line repeating forever. This record does not correspond to any known planet. I thought it was a system glitch, until I checked the others, dozens of them, hundreds, everyone exactly the same. Every piece of evidence that we ever existed had been scrubbed, not just deleted, overwritten. The administratum didn't forget us. They never logged us in the first place to begin with. The names of our leaders? Gone. The requisitions sent by our guard regiments? Gone as well. The missionary reports? Erased. Our last known census now lists our population status as null. We opened a vault beneath the old Schola Progenium, where the orphans of guardsmen were once trained. Inside, we found a stone mural depicting the founding of our world. Colonists landing. Astartes blessing the soil. A priest of the ecclesiarchy holding up the aquila. But someone had scratched out every face, chiseled the names from every plinth, burned every wax seal. One sentence remained beneath the scorched relief. All records of this colony are denied, stamped by order of Segmentum Command, marked with a sigil none of us even recognized. So we dug deeper, through archive bunkers and tunnels lined with long-dead scribes and dust-choked shelves, vaults still humming with locked memory cores, whispers of forgotten faith in every groaning stone. We tried to breach one of the cores. It opened itself, no password, no encryption. It showed only a single image, a map of the Imperium, our galaxy in full, every sector, every cluster, but where we should be, where our sun should shine, was nothing. No name, no light, no stars, just a void labeled unclaimed region. Even the stars have forgotten us. A dying cartographer, once tasked with our star charts, admitted on his deathbed, "I spent 20 years adjusting coordinates to hide us from view. They told me we didn't belong, said our orbit was inconvenient, that forgetting would shield us." He slit his own throat before we could ask more, his final map still clenched in hand. The Officio Astra Telepathica once sent psychers here. We found their bones, unmarked and unrecorded, their robes folded beside collapsed Vox chambers. No trace in any Imperial travel logs or rosters. Only one message, scratched into the wall in astropathic blood. Even dreams are forbidden here. And still the unraveling spreads. The names of our hives change without warning or logic. Maps mutate overnight. Buildings reappear in places they were never built. Entire districts vanish without a sound. One man swore he had a daughter. No one else remembered her name. No one at all. Her gravestone bore no inscription. Only the chilling words, "Entry not found." I screamed into the Vox last night, just to hear my voice bounce back in the dark. But there was no echo, just static. And then a reply whispered back, "The system you're attempting to reach does not exist." We wrote our names on walls, on skin, on stone. But even those are fading now. Ink dries to nothing. Stone smooths itself overnight. Skin peels without scarring. Nothing is held. One scribe uncovered an old scroll, once listing our planetary holidays. He wept as he read, "Today is no day. You are number one. Your gods are not real. Your death will be unrecorded." They say forgetting is mercy. But this is erasure. Deliberate, precise, cold as vacuum. Erasure so absolute that even the warp hesitates to remember us. Even monsters need anchors. But we slip through the cracks. A world shaped like absence. A people formed from loss. A civilization held together only by the refusal to be gone, to be unmade completely. We were never in the records. Not because we weren't worthy, but because we were studied, observed, we failed, we were judged. The Emperor didn't forget. The Imperium chose instead. It was easier to rewrite the galaxy than admit we ever mattered in the first place. We are the error that lingered too long, the thread that didn't snap clean, the echo The page that bleeds through to the next one, unwanted, indelible, and unconsumed by fire. We remember, and that alone is heresy. It started during the 7th dusk of the new cycle. The sky, what little sky we still had, glowed a sickly, low amber, not from a sun, not from lumen spires, just from above. A faint shimmer, like someone had drawn curtains made of dust across the stars. Then came the footsteps. No sound at first, just the pressure of being watched, the sense of weight in the air, thick and waiting like the pause before a scream. I saw them before anyone else, at the end of the promenade. Figures, not ghosts, not corpses, not people, but something in between all three. There were no faces, no mouths, no eyes, but they wore expressions anyway, not features, just moods carved into skinless bone. Some looked joyful, some mournful, some simply empty. They walked in pairs, slow, perfect, rhythmic, down the center of the plaza between collapsed shrines and shattered aquilas. No one dared speak, no one moved. I counted 73 of them. All different heights, all wearing the remnants of clothing no one recognized. Not guard, not civilian, not priestly, just cloth, layered like forgotten flags. A child near me whispered, "That one has my father's eyes." Her mother slapped her hard, but the child didn't flinch, just stared. Someone else gasped, "That one looks like my sister, but I never had a sister." They walked for 27 minutes. Then they vanished behind a collapsed manufactorum. No one followed, we didn't have to, because they came again the next dusk, and again the next, and again the next. Always at dusk, always different. Every dusk they arrived at a different part of the hive, never speaking, never stopping, never changing. But their numbers grew, 84, 96, 120, always in pairs. Always in procession. Someone tried to vox a report. The transmission bounced back with a single line, "Event already logged." No one knew what that meant until we checked the records and saw them. The processions were already documented in old Auspex footage, in picked feeds from decades ago. Different faces, same walk, same rhythm, same destination. It was a loop, a repetition. We found etchings on an old shrine wall, children's drawings, crude but clear, the same figures drawn decades earlier, same pairs, same gestures. A title above the carving, "The Forgotten Parade," signed, "Terror, age 6. But there's no record of a terror ever living in this hive, or any hive, or ever being born. The people in the procession, they're not dead, they're not alive. They're unwritten, souls unassigned, identities never finalized. They are the answers to questions never asked, the memory of people without names, the echoes of might-have-beens, and somehow our planet called them. A Vox priest tried to stop them once. He stood in their path with a censer and rosarius, chanted the litany of banishment. They walked right through him. He fell to his knees, tears streaming, mouth whispering, "My son, I never had a son, but I remember his voice." He died 7 hours later, body intact, mind shattered beyond repair. Adeptus Medicae found his brain had been overwritten with non-existent memories. His final Vox scan showed electrical impulses in patterns inconsistent with human anatomy, as if he'd begun dreaming with someone else's mind. The procession continues. Every dusk, every sector. Some say if you follow them long enough, you'll see your true self. Others say you'll see the person you were never allowed to become. One man vanished after joining the walk. He matched their pace, their posture, slipped between a pair of glowing twins, and simply stayed. His name was wiped from every system. Even his wife forgot his voice. Someone tried to sculpt one of their faces from memory. The clay cracked, the lines twisted, and the sculptor screamed, it's me, but not from here." He bit off his tongue before they could sedate him. Now we just watch, because you don't stop a memory that was never yours to begin with. They are not hostile, not malicious. They just walk through a planet that shouldn't exist, on a world that forgot itself long ago. Maybe we are their dream, maybe they are our punishment, or maybe they are what's left when the warp remembers someone the universe never did. Governor Valthan was a bureaucrat before all this, not a zealot, not a prophet, not even a soldier. He believed in ledgers, Vox-confirmed shipments, sector quotas, and the reliability of stamped documents. He once ordered a man shot for faking a shipment of rations, not because it was cruel, but because it threw off the numbers. We survive by math, he told us, not myth. Then the Vox went dark. Then the supply drops stopped. Then the pilgrims started speaking in tongues they'd never learned, and Governor Valthan kept reading reports, kept filing requisitions, kept preaching loyalty to a throne that no longer listened. But something changed. It started when he stopped speaking. For a week his lips didn't move at all. He just sat in his tower, staring at the stars that no longer matched the official imperial charts. He didn't sleep, didn't eat, just stared. Then came the blood letter, delivered by hand. No courier remembered the journey, no seal, just a square of parchment, still wet to the touch. Written in ink that shifted under light, the message read, "We heard your silence. You are remembered by the forgotten. Do not speak of him again." The next morning, Valthan walked to the top of the Vox Tower. Every lumen in the hive flickered in sync. Every servitor turned toward the spire. Every priest fell silent, and the governor, who had never led prayer in his life, began to confess aloud. But it wasn't to the emperor. His words didn't match any catechism. They pulsed in a rhythm, like breathing, or music made of static. It sounded like pain recited backwards, like hope being reversed. Some fell to their knees. Others screamed and tore at their ears. One child began weeping blood and whispered, "That's the name. That's the name no one was supposed to remember." His confession lasted 17 hours. No food, no pause, no sense, just syllables that warped the air itself. A tech priest listening through a sealed receiver gouged out his own auditory implants. Said he heard something breathing between each word. At the end, Valthan opened his arms, smiled, and said in clear low Gothic, "He listened. He does not demand worship, only memory." Then he stepped from the tower. He didn't fall, he vanished, not dissolved, not exploded, just ceased. Where his body should have landed, there was only a circular burn, 10 meters wide, perfectly clean. No one could step into it. Anyone who tried forgot their own name before their second step. That burn still hums. If you place your ear close enough, you'll hear a whisper. Confession accepted. Await processing. And now, every dusk, a voice speaks from the tower. No one is up there. No power runs through it. But the voice echoes across the hive without fail. Not a sermon, not a chant, just a phrase, on loop. He remembered us, and so we remember him. The priests no longer mention the emperor. They've stopped using High Gothic altogether. They burn their scrolls and chant in a tongue that makes no marks when written. They smile too often, and their eyes don't blink anymore. A medica team tried to tranquilize one of the confessors. He spoke before they touched him. The lungs are for more than breath. The tongue is for more than speech. The soul is a recording device. They never made it out of the chapel. The security feeds cut to static. Only a single frame survived. It shows every confessor looking directly at the lens, smiling, as if posing for a portrait none of us ever asked for. Some still try to resist. They whisper the old prayers. They clutch broken aquilas. They light candles and scream his name into broken Vox units. Nothing replies, but the blood from their candles burns blue now, and the wax drips into letters they can't read or understand. Someone found a new version of the Lectitio Divinitatus. The words looked the same, but the meaning wasn't. The margins whispered, the pages bled, and in the back, scrawled in dried ink, "He is not gone. He has just been replaced." Governor Valthan was the first to confess. He will not be the last. This planet has become a chapel, not to the God Emperor, but to something that still listens, that never forgets, that doesn't ask for faith, only memory. We were desperate when we prayed, not out of devotion, not for glory, just to be remembered. It wasn't even real prayer anymore, just breath and blood and begging into a silence older than stars. The ecclesiarchy had long since gone quiet. Their altars were broken, their shrines reclaimed by ash and collapse, but even the godless know how to plead. I remember the first time we prayed after the forgetting. It wasn't organized, no mass, no bell, just a crowd of us in the dust and dimming light, faces covered in dust, some in blood, some with nothing left at all, sitting in what was once a chapel. The statues had no heads. The aquila above the pulpit had one wing. The stained glass was just jagged holes filtering grey light and wind. And still, we knelt. We didn't speak his name, because by then we weren't sure whose name we should say. We just spoke, into silence, and the silence replied. At first we thought it was an echo, some vibration in the walls, or failing machine spirit mimicking our own despair. But it wasn't that. It was slower than echo, stranger. It was listening, and then it started to hum, not music, not language, just presence, a rhythm behind thought, like a heartbeat too large to belong to anything living, like something waking up. We didn't stop praying because we couldn't. Our mouths moved on their own. Some whispered names they didn't know. Others sobbed in tongues no longer spoken in this part of the galaxy. A woman next to me gasped and screamed, "It's looking back!" We turned, and the stained glass, what little of it remained, was glowing faintly, each shard pulsing with pupil-shaped light. It blinked, not all at once, sequentially, left to right, top to bottom, like it was scanning us. Then the earth shook, only once, not an earthquake, more like a footstep, something enormous shifting beneath the crust of the world. One man stood, eyes wide, mouth dripping blood. He pointed at the sky and shrieked, "We prayed wrong." And then he burst into flame. No one ran. We couldn't, because something was holding us in place. Not physically, existentially, like we'd been pinned by attention alone. You don't realize how loud being noticed is until something older than reality itself decides you're worth its gaze. And still, we prayed, even as the heat rose, even as voices cracked and skin blistered, even as memory faltered. I remember thinking, if this is what it takes to be remembered, so be it. That's when it opened its eyes, not literal eyes. The sky didn't split, the stars didn't rearrange, but we felt it, a sudden reversal, like time had forgotten to move forward, like gravity had inverted, like thought had a direction and that direction was toward it. It knew us, not as names, not as people, but as a concept, a collective wound, an unanswered question in the void. We had prayed to the Emperor, but he had long stopped listening. This thing, it never stopped. It just waited for the silence to be deep enough, for faith to rot into something ripe, for need to ferment into offering. It answered, not with words, not even with images, but with understanding, sudden, horrible, total. Every one of us knew at once what it wanted. Nothing, not loyalty, not sacrifice, not even praise, just our presence, our recognition, our surrender to being seen. It didn't demand devotion, it fed on it, and we had offered enough. The stained glass burst. The wingless aquila screamed like it was alive and in agony. And above us, in the hollow roof where the dome had collapsed decades before, the sky cracked, not physically, just the illusion of distance, of scale, of safety. And through the fissure came color that had no name, light that burned ideas, shapes that made no spatial sense, a pulse, a gaze, then silence. Everyone in that chapel is gone now. No bodies, no ash, just robes, laid in place, like they knelt until the very end, except for me. I was the last to speak, and I didn't say a prayer. I asked a question, "What are you?" And it answered, "I am the ear that remained open when the stars went deaf. Now I hear it always. In vox static, in the hum of lumen strips, in my blood when it pumps too fast. A presence, patient, hungry, waiting for the next prayer. We used to say the Emperor protects. Now we say the silence provides. Because something heard us, and it has not closed its eyes. Coordinates are irrelevant now. We are no longer on a planet. We are inside something remembering it. Final entry from Explorator Night Seraphim Core, 3 hours before planetary compression. It began with the sun, not its disappearance, its doubling. 2 suns, identical, orbiting one another, spiraling slowly in a dance of ruin. A pattern that defied gravitational models. The Mechanicus tried to model the anomaly, but they failed. Not because of complexity, but because the laws were wrong. Physics bent inward. Math reversed itself mid-formula. The cogitators melted, not from heat, but from dissonance. Then came the oceans. All 3 major toxic basins began to recede, but the water didn't evaporate, didn't drain. It just sank into the crust, through rock, as if depth was no longer a factor. Seismographs flatlined, then inverted, then began charting movement upward from the planet's core, as if the center of mass was leaving. Tectonic plates bent, not from stress, but from memory. Landmarks collapsed into themselves. Rivers flowed in spirals. Mountains straightened, then turned sideways, as if they were being read like script. And all across the planet, one thing became clear. This world was folding, not crumbling, not exploding, folding like paper or a map. A map being collapsed back into its starting form. And we, the faithful, the forgotten, the begging, we watched. Some wept, some cheered, some stood numb. But we all felt it, that this was not an accident, not a warp storm, not divine retribution, not madness. This was intentional. We had prayed, we had been heard, and now something was returning us. To what? We didn't know, but the planet had been acknowledged, and the price of attention was unraveling. Entire hive spires began bending toward the center of the planet, not collapsing, not toppling, bending, smooth arcs like metal softened by divine heat. One spire curled into a perfect ring before it winked out of existence. No explosion, no sound, just an absence. Astropaths bled from every orifice, but their mouths never closed. They spoke as they died. We are not falling. We are returning to shape. The gravity wells warped. Time slowed, then looped, then snapped back with shuddering force. People reported seeing their own past footsteps before they took them. Others lived entire days again, out of order. I saw my brother. He died 10 years ago, but there he was, standing in a transit lift, holding my mother's rosary. I called his name. He smiled. Then he blinked out of frame, like a picked reel missing a single vital second. The crust of the planet began curling like parchment left too long in fire. The horizon narrowed. Cities disappeared without dust. Everything was pulling in, but not toward the core, toward a center that no longer existed. At one point, we reached the edges of the hive. There should have been mountains, barren hills, ash plains. Instead, there was nothing, a perfectly smooth curve of the planet curling upward, like we were walking along the inside of a sphere that had begun to remember it was flat. One guardsman snapped and tried to fire at the curve. The bullets never left the barrel. He collapsed, screaming. I aimed at forward, and it aimed at before. We no longer trusted direction. Up meant nothing. North meant lies. The stars, what few we could still see, spun like wheels without axes. Then came the spiral. A light, no, a tide, of fractal blue crawling across the sky. It traced the folding edges, lit the seams like stitches, and from each lit seam rose chanting, not human, not machine, something mechanical in rhythm, organic in depth, like a choir of lungs singing in binary. And the words, they came to all of us at once. We remember your shape. Let us return you to it. No one knew what that meant until people started vanishing, not dying, unmaking. They shimmered, twitched, and then their edges flattened, as if they were being compressed into 2 dimensions, like illustrations in a book, folded once, twice, gone. Their clothes remained, but inside was just ash, perfectly pressed. like they'd been filed away. The process wasn't cruel, it wasn't violent, it was administrative, like the planet was no longer a world, but a document being closed. One final page, one final crease, and then we would be shelved. Those of us who remained began whispering to one another. This is what happens when you're not just forgotten, but remembered incorrectly. We tried to reach out via vox, signal flares, even burning symbols into the ground. But every message came back the same, a single pulse of static that resolved into a heartbeat. Ours, number the planets. It had become alive, not in the way of organisms, but in the way of narratives. It had shape and theme and closure, and we were now part of its conclusion. The last spire folded yesterday. It didn't fall. It bent forward like a monk in prayer and kissed the ground. Then it vanished, leaving behind only its shadow, a shadow that stayed, even in total darkness. There is no more horizon now, only a circle of dim light above us, growing smaller each hour. Some say it's the warp, others say it's a lid, closing. I don't know if I'll be here to write the end, but if someone finds this, if someone remembers this place, know this: we existed, we prayed, we were seen, and the gaze of the unseen does not blink. There are no more names, not for cities, not for people, not for anything. The air still moves, the ash still falls, but there are no words to describe it. We used to call this Hive Talvora. Now, it is just shape and shadow. Even the survivors don't use language anymore. Because it fails. Because it breaks under the weight of what we've become. My own name is slipping. I try to say it aloud, but the syllables twist, come out backward, like the sound is trying to hide. There were once thousands of us, then hundreds, now maybe dozens. We don't count anymore, not because we can't, but because numbers are a reminder that we were once seen, and nothing wants to remember that anymore, not even us. We've turned to symbols, scratched into stone, pressed into skin, a language made of loops and inverted lines, some instinctive effort to mark what resists deletion, but even those fade now. Hours after they're made, the walls smooth themselves, the skin forgets the wound. One man tried to carve a message into his own chest. We remember, but the letters bled into curves, then into dots, then into nothing, like the flesh itself wanted to forget. Even our shadows are unreliable. They twitch the wrong way, stretch toward light instead of away from it. One survivor screamed when her own shadow turned and looked at her. She ran into the fold line, never came out. We live in silence now, not out of reverence, out of self-preservation. Every word spoken aloud risks being noticed. Every sound is a signal, and there is still something listening. We tried hiding in old bunkers, didn't work. The rooms warped, corners collapsed inward, floor tiles began to bleed, and in the dark between one blink and the next, entire walls whispered, "There is no forgetting, only formatting." The tech priests called it a systemic memory collapse. Said we were undergoing narrative decay, that the laws of causality and identity were being compacted, that the planet itself was processing its last boot cycle, and we were the leftover files. Garbage data, one of them said, before his mouth folded shut, and his eyes started blinking in binary. I don't know how long it's been since I last saw the sky. What sky remains is curved, like we're inside a dome painted with the idea of stars. Some flicker, others loop their movements. One star has blinked the word "forget" for the last 4 nights. We should be afraid, but fear needs hope to exist, and there is no hope here, only residue. I spoke to one other survivor yesterday, or maybe it was a memory of one. He sat by a folded wall muttering something like a prayer. His mouth didn't move, but I heard him, inside my head, like the echo of someone else's thought. "They won't forget us," he said, "because they never knew we were real to begin with." Then he unraveled, like parchment in water, just layers of identity, peeling back until only the outline remained. There are no eyes left to see us, no record, no relay. The Imperium has no data, the stars carry no log. We are the faith that kept speaking after the audience left the room. No banners remain, no sigils, no saints, only breath and dirt and memory too stubborn to die. I walk alone now, not because others are gone, but because the ones left are not truly people anymore. They speak in fractured catechisms. They move like habits without flesh, like ghosts made from ritual. They kneel, they chant, sometimes facing walls that no longer exist, sometimes to altars that fold inward like flowers blooming in reverse. But I still walk, because that is how I remember myself. Movement, purpose, direction, even if there's nowhere left to go. The world is smaller now, the sky is a lid, the horizon curves up so tight you can see your own footprints from behind. The fold is almost complete, you can hear it, if you stand still enough. The low groan of matter remembering its starting shape. The Mechanicus would have called it spatial recursion. The ecclesiarchy might have named it ascension, but I call it closure. The universe has stopped asking about us, and so it folds us away. I found a chapel yesterday, not one we built. It wasn't there before. It had no walls, no roof, just pews, arranged in concentric circles, all facing a point that pulsed with light, not bright, not hot, just constant, a reminder that something still notices. I sat in the back row. The seats were warm, as if 1,000 had sat there just before me. No voices, no priest, just the presence. It said nothing, but I felt it, like a pulse behind my thoughts. I whispered, "Why are we still here?" And the light flickered once, a beat of recognition, then silence. But that was enough. Not hope, faith, the kind you don't need proof for, the kind that endures not because it is rewarded, but because it refuses to be silenced. That's what we are now, those who would not silence. I passed a figure today, a silhouette pressed into the wall, not burned, not etched, embedded, as if someone had prayed so hard they sank into the world and became part of its last thought. I recognized the robes. Preacher Mavrin, he used to say, "Faith is a muscle. If you stop using it, it atrophies." He must have flexed his until the world couldn't take it anymore. I stopped and put my hand against the outline, felt nothing, but I spoke anyway. "You were not forgotten." The ground beneath my feet responded, a hum, a flicker, like the world was listening or dreaming of me. We are not survivors, we are witnesses to the collapse of attention, to the death of acknowledgement, to a reality so thoroughly ignored that even time let go. And still, we chant, we walk, we remember, not for glory, not for salvation, but because we are the last rhythm in a song that refuses to end. There's no one left to write this down, but I carve my thoughts into what's left of this data slate, even as the words slide off the surface, even as the letters change when I blink, because even if the sentence cannot survive, the will behind it might. And that will is this: we endured, without witness, without validation, without the emperor's gaze, and we still believed, not in salvation, not in rescue, just in each other. I do not know what chapter 50 holds. Maybe oblivion, maybe something worse, maybe a beginning, but I'll walk there anyway, because that's what faith does. It walks forward, even when the path has already been erased. If you hear this, it means we made it out, but not all of us did, and some of us still don't know they're dreaming. Last transmission logged from Hive Desvalis, planetary cycle unknown. The fold is nearly complete. The stars have stopped speaking. The warp is quiet. Even silence feels far away, like it too has forgotten how to reach us. There is no sky above, only memory, pressed thin, taut, like parchment that's about to tear. And beneath that surface, a shape moves. Not a god, not a demon, something older than both, something that never needed worship, only neglect. We invited it, not with ritual, but with absence. Absence of orders, absence of notice, absence of him. The emperor did not abandon us. That would imply choice. No, he forgot us. And in that forgetting, something else remembered. I don't know what remains of the others. I haven't seen another face in cycles. Even my reflection avoids me, but I still hear the chanting sometimes, faint, worn, reverent, as if the world is dreaming of its own faith, of what it used to mean to believe. I found a place where the world hasn't finished folding, a seam, a bubble in the parchment. Inside it, a room, unmapped, unmarked, and in the center, a console, flickering, alive. I don't know who built it, or if it's real, but it listens, not like the Vox, not like the warp. It listens like a story waiting to be retold. I speak into it, I tell it everything, what happened, what we saw, who we were. I name every person I remember. I describe the hive in perfect detail, not because it matters, because it's all I have left. And when I finish, the console pulses, not green, not red, yellow, like the dying sun on a distant world no one will ever visit again. A voice plays back. It's not mine, it's not human, but it says, pattern logged, entry archived, signal broadcast, unmarked, unmarked, untraceable, unacknowledged, a whisper in the static. That's how it spreads, not through conquest, but through memory. One forgotten planet, one folded world, one voice refusing to go quiet. And that's when I realize we were not meant to survive. We were meant to be recorded, to be a warning or an invitation. Maybe this planet never existed, maybe it still doesn't. But now that you have heard us, now that the signal has reached you, it cannot be unheard. This is how the silence breaks, not with war, not with a scream, but with a name whispered from a place that was never supposed to be. So I leave you this, one final sentence, carved into the fold, etched between seconds. The Emperor forgot this planet. Now it remembers you. The silence isn't finished. Some signals never stop echoing. If you can still hear us, subscribe and listen closely, because the next world they forget might be your own.